2020 regular board meeting of the Inglewood District Order. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N2520, which suspends certain requirements of the Ralph M. Brown Act. Furthermore, in compliance with Governor Newsom's Executive Order N2520, in response to the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak, the district will conduct this meeting as a video and teleconference. We're going to move on to item number 2 of our agenda. I'm going to ask Ms. Montenegro if she could please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise. Put your hand over your head. Face the flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it
stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Montenegro. Would you please call the roll?
Yes, Dr. D'Artagnan Scorza, please.
Present.
Dr. Dion Young-Paul.
Present.
Dr. Carlos McGee.
She's muted.
Dr. Carlos McGee.
I'm present.
Thank you. Ms. Alice Grigsby.
Present.
Ms. Alice Grigsby.
Present.
Thank you. Margaret Turner Evans.
Present.
Dr. Erica Torres.
Present.
Dr. Bernadette Lucas.
Present.
Hedia Kajabi.
Present.
Christine Dakanai.
Present.
And Mr. Norberto Perez.
Present.
Thank you. Please be informed that Spanish language interpretation is available during the meeting. Ofrecemos interpretación al español durante la junta. Gracias.
Thank you, Ms. Montenegro. We're going to move on to item number 4 of our agenda. I hereby adopt the agenda with no modifications. We're going to begin our board meeting with recognitions, and I just wanted to congratulate all of our honorees this evening. We have 190 certificated and classified employees that we're going to be honoring this evening in our board meeting. And I wanted to let our staff and community know that I'm so honored for the opportunity to congratulate our IUSD family members for their years of service. And so we are honoring our employees today we're going to begin with those employees that have 5 years of service with the Inglewood Unified School District. And I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kajabi so that she could lead us through this presentation.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Dr. Torres. Can I have the presentation? We have a PowerPoint presentation.
You can see it out there.
Okay. So we're honoring our most valuable research, which there are staff. And the next slide is a sample of a certificate of service. Due to the current circumstances, we're mailing out the certificates and a pin to our honorees. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Lucas, that she will be reading out loud the names of our certificated and classified honorees, 5 years of service. Dr. Lucas?
Awesome. So can we advance the slide, please? Okay, wonderful. Okay, Aaron DeWitt Eden, Anna Darras, Anita Rios, Anita M. Walker, Brandon Choi, Brandon Johnson, Brian Bailey, Brooke A. Riley, Charles R. Elliott, Charletta Johnson, Jason D. Johnson, Jonathan L. Solomon, Julio C. Morales, Justino Rios Tellez, Kayla Naylor, Keith J. Johnson, Christopher Schmidt, Mark R. Chavez, Maria Caro, Maricela Mancillas. Forgive me, Maricela. And Maritza Ramos. 10 years of service. Antonio Flores, Arle Choi, Belinda J. Valle, Byron Miller, Janice Whitfield, Johnny Glasker, Julie Frazier, Maria Aguirre, Miriam Solomon, Emger Antonian, Nicole Moore, Patricia Neal. 15 years of service. Alan Fowler, Angel Garcia, Annette Anderson, Ariana Martin, Benedict Iguezi, Benny Iguazim, Brenda J. Melinder, Brent Ginsburg, Carolyn McDonald, Devette Lenani Nye, Desiree Obregon, Donnell Meekins, Edna Sulilan. 20 years of service. Adela Rogers, Alicia Martinez, Althea Williamson, Angela Nadozi, Annette Rangel, Annie Kim, Carrie Todd, Charles Wright, Darcy Leah Smith, Deanna Renee Quinn, Dion Gordon, Douglas Maraki, Eduardo Martin. 20 years of service. LaWanda Roberts, Latrice Leverett, Lillian Edith Grant, Madeline Tedosian. I'm sorry. I was all on one page. Okay. Yeah. Let me change this. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Ms. Montenegro gave me an updated list. So we want to make sure that everyone's honored. So I will be going back to read some names. But I will finish this slide first. Latrice Leverett, Lillian Edith Grant, Madeline Titosian, Marshall Cooksey, Martina Garcia, Myron Montez, Imba Simon Ngocom, Mgumi Sison, Miguel Castellanos, Minelva Chavaria, and Nicole Lester for 20 years of service. I also have additional staff members with 20 years of service, so I will be reading their names. Forgive me if I repeat, but it's very important that we acknowledge all of our employees and their service. Adela Vallejo Rogers, Alicia Martinez, Althea Williamson, Angela Nadozi, Annette Rangel, Annie Kim, Carrie Todd, Charles Wright, Darcy Leah Smith, Deanna Renee Quinn, Dion Gordon, Douglas Maraki, Eduardo Martin, Gabriela Gallegos, Gabriela Pozos, Galeen Munford, Giovanna Tellez, Hori Fogarty, Iris Gutierrez, Irma Altstater, Jacqueline Barnett, Jessica Herrera, Joanna Clifton, Jose Rivera, Joyce Roberts, Juanita Matthews, Kathleen Grisby, Kathleen Grissett, Ladar Vons, LaShonda Johnson, Lorinda Armstrong. Okay. Continuing with 20 years of service, LaWanda, I'm sorry, I'm not yet I'm 25. Please forgive me. We have some more for 20 years. And it's quite a few. So this shows a lot of loyalty and commitment to this district, which is amazing, and the district students. LaWanda Roberts at 20 years of service, Latrice Leverett, Lillian Edith Grant, Madeline Titosian, Marshall Cooksey, Martina Garcia, Myra Montez, Mba Simone Jocom, Megumi Sison, Miguel Castellanos, Menelva Chavaria, Nicole Lester, Ramona Fabian Rocha, Sakina Maisha Davis, Salvador Gonzalez, Sonoko Gishlandi, Stravrola Ducos, Stephanie Ann Fortunato, Stephanie Larie Vanier, Susie Lowe, Tamika Mosby, Terry Norwood, Tiffany Young, Valerie K. Demorest, Vincent Okuma, Wanda Daniels, Yadil Preciado. Okay, now for 25 years of service. This is incredible. Ada Kinoshita, Anita Ramirez, Angina Prasad, Cheryl Denise Patterson, Clara Vela, Dwight Anthony Wilson, Fabiola Marquez, Francisco Javier Ortega, Isabel Montenegro, Jackie Lee, Julie K. Morgan, Louis John Ramirez, Maricela Zambrano, Miriam Munoz, Pamela Renee Sheard, Penny Miller, Rosalina Lynn Ramirez, Santosh Roperia, Shawana Michelle McBride, Tambera Dion Thompson, Veronica Guillen Morales, Victor Chique Obaduaga, Yvonne Andrea Scott. Now we're moving to 30 years of service. Incredible. Andrea Bobbitt, Angelica Chavez, Bertha May Robinson, Blanca Cifuentes, Carol A. Thomas, Kathy Autry, Evangelina Rodriguez, Horace John Farr, Jorge Luis Gonzalez, Carla Harness Brown, Lisa Michelle Lewis, Lorena Pettis, Marie Leslie, Michael Jr. Butler, Milagros Chiara, Encilo Lucas, Otis Childress, Robin Wagner, Rock Raymond Rosen, Rosemary Tate, Susan Meath, Winona Slush. And if the community, the board and the community will indulge me, I want to make sure we covered everyone's name. We all know that that's incredibly important. The slides are slightly different than what we have here. So I do have to go back to 5 years of service just to make sure we covered everyone's name. I believe we did this first row. Charles R. Elliott, Charletta Johnson at 5 years, Christiana Cooper, 5 years, Crystal Birch, DeAndre Graham, Eva Morales, Franciola Armstrong, Frank Weaver, Gavin English, Gladys Franklin, Glenda Ofor, Gustavo Rojas, Paul Tron, Homa Tabrizi, Jacqueline Silas, Jamar Miles, Brooke Riley, Brian Bailey, Brandon Johnson, Brandon Choi. Okay. Continuing with 5 years of service, Jason D. Johnson, Jonathan Solomon, Julio Morales, Justino Rios Tellez, Kayla Naylor, Keith Johnson, Christopher Schmidt, Mark Chavez, Maria Caro, Maricela Mancias, Maritza Ramos, Melissa Rendon, Michael Crawford, Nissian Elliott Johnson, Robert Dawson, Rosa Orosamane, Rose McFoy, Chandra Chestnut, Shanika Hicks, Sharice Golden, Sanji Boulette, Timothy O'Kane, Tommy Pink, Yanira Reyes. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So now for 35 years of service, my colleague Norberto Perez.
Adriana Perez, Arlene W. Burton, Jennifer Lynn Salguero, Jonathan Chamberlain, Josefina Rodriguez, Lucy Camarena, Mary Lou Ringgold, Reginald Lowe Searles, Shonda Luckett.
Thank you. And now Dr. Torres for 40 years of service.
Thank you, Ms. Kajabi. Deborah Tate, Donald F. Myers, Natusha M. Redmond Patterson.
And for 45 years of service, Dr. Torres, please.
Dora B. Head, Gloria J. Crump, Roger Miner, Susan R. Ipangi.
And for 46 years of service, Dr. Torres.
Anna M. Williams.
And for 48 years of service.
Nati Mari Reyes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your service. Thank you very much. This was the end of our PowerPoint presentation for employees' years of service with Inglewood Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davi. And I wanted to take this opportunity to thank and acknowledge all of our employees for your hard work, commitment, and dedication to the Inglewood Unified School District. We appreciate you so much, and congratulations again. I'd like to ask our board if you have any comments as we honor our employees for years of service. Dr. Scorza.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Torres. I just have to say that after a number of years, obviously, for me being in this district, it's so amazing to hear this, right? As someone who graduated from school, to know that there's a commitment of our team members and our staff, and I won't say how many years, but for more than 20 years for me, it's so amazing to see the hard work and dedication. I think people often underappreciate the work of educators, but I think COVID-19 has brought it back to the forefront. And it's important that we not only honor, but we lift up the heroes that are still serving our families. You all are the heartbeat of a community. Our schools are the heartbeats of our community. We've seen that in the midst of this pandemic. And I don't think we thank you all enough. And today, at least, is a small gesture towards a long a career of service whereby gratitude is due to each and every single team member. And it's also, I think, a reflection and recognition of the appreciation that the board, that this district, that our leadership of Dr. Torres and our cabinet members have for the years of service that each of you have given to our children and our families, the service that you're still giving to our children and our families, including my own. So thank you for that hard work. It was amazing to hear the 30 plus years of service. I mean, it's just mind-blowing and phenomenal. Board members, Dr. Falk.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I definitely want to just kind of piggyback on what Dr. Scorza said. I am so amazed to see so many of our employees have been there so long. 48 years of service was amazing to me. And I want to congratulate, I unfortunately, I don't know everyone personally, but I did recognize several names on the list. I know Isabel Montenegro, congratulations on 25 years of service. And there were several other ones, but it confirms to me what I feel as a board member, and that is that we are more like a family here at Inglewood Unified. This is more than just a district. This is our culture. This is who we are. This is, family for a lot of us. So I just am really happy to see that people want to be around and want to continue the fight that we have here in Inglewood to make this district the best district it can be for our babies. So congratulations to all of our awardees for being with the district. We appreciate you and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Dion. Ms. Evans?
Well, you've said most of the same things I wanted to say. Dion, thank you for pointing out that we have some family there with Isabel and Maricela, who make my life much better because they keep me abreast of everything that's going on. Since they know I don't go on the computer all the time, I want to personally thank them. But I saw some names on there that I did recognize, and I didn't realize in the beginning they were going to be certificated and classified all mixed in together. So I was trying to go through the list and pick out the ones that I recognized. But I thank you also, Dr. Flores, and the board, for the cabinet, for even recognizing all of our employees. That just helps just to make it a little bit better, something that makes you feel good during this time, especially. But I want to thank you for doing that and recognizing all of our employees who keep us going every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ms. McGee? All right, Ms. McGee, Dr. McGee, Ms. Grigsby, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. And I'd like to add my voice to the congratulations to all of the many employees who were recognized today. And I would just end by saying, by your work do we know you. What you have done and continue to do for the students of this district is truly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much, board members, and congratulations again to all of our staff. We appreciate you. Next on our agenda, we're moving to item 5B. And this is a very special occasion for us here in Inglewood Unified School District because we have an opportunity to honor our graduates, our class of 2020. And what I wanted to tell all of our graduates is that we're so proud of each one of you. You are extremely resilient, and we recognize that it's been extremely challenging. Things have changed, and it seems like things changed overnight, and I just wanted to congratulate you and thank you. And we're so proud of you, and today we're going to take time to recognize and celebrate our class of 2020 graduates. And despite all of the challenges that they faced, we wanted to make sure that we highlight our class of 2020. I also wanted our graduates and our community members to know that we are finalizing our plan for graduation, and we recently received additional guidance from the LA County Department of Public Health. And so we're going to be sending out information to all of our families and our graduates about our date for graduation. And so we want to make sure that we make it as special as possible. And I know that you will not be disappointed. So I am really excited to share that Inglewood Unified School District has posted messages on the City of Inglewood's digital billboards where we're honoring and acknowledging our class of 2020 graduates. We've also ordered class of 2020 lawn signs for our graduates, and so we're going to be distributing those very soon, and we hope that our graduates post these signs in front of their homes. Also, our seniors will continue to receive weekly communications from their principals about our plans for graduation, and we're going to be providing more details as soon as possible. We continue to highlight the stories of our graduating seniors on our newsletter, and I encourage all of our families to share videos and pictures of our students receiving scholarships and other recognitions, and we ask that you continue to please forward this information to us at IUSD class of 2020 at inglewoodusd.com. We want to continue to honor all of our graduates for their achievements. I'm going to ask Dr. Lucas to please get us started as we celebrate our class of 2020. Dr. Lucas.
Thank you so much, Dr. Torres. It is my honor to follow you in congratulating our seniors. They are truly an amazing group of young women and men. I've had the opportunity to meet many of them, and the pride that all of us feel in them and their families for getting them to this point is very, very hard to describe. I know that the representatives from the three classes would like to make remarks in response to your beautiful remarks. So we're going to go in alphabetical order, starting with City Honors. Ms. Amani Lucas, if you would kindly respond. Senior Class Vice President of City Honors, Senior Class of 2020.
Hi. Okay. Okay. Basically, I just wanted to say that I believe the graduating class of 2020 has to be the strongest and the most resilient graduating class we've had, like, ever. Despite all the factors working against us, we were still able to push through and finish, still standing tall, especially the students like Stephanie, Barajas, and Emmanuel, to guide us along the way. For that reason, I'm proud to say I'm a part of this class, and congratulations to the class of 2020. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucas, Senior Class Vice President of City Honors, International Prep. Wonderful, beautiful remarks. Moving on in alphabetical order, Inglewood High School Senior Class President, Miss Natalie Franco.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Senior Class President from Inglewood High School, and I'm here to congratulate the class of 2020. This is a huge achievement for all of us, and I'm very proud of all the graduates. But we couldn't have done it alone without the support of staff, family, friends, and the administration. We thank you all for helping us embark on our next journey. We'll continue to do great things in the future, as well as better things. Congratulations, we did it. We owe ourselves a huge round of applause. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ms. Franco, thank you so much. That was beautiful also. And last but certainly not least is the Senior Class President of Morningside High School, Miss Diana Farrell.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Diana Farrell. I am the Senior Class President, and I am so honored to be speaking on behalf of the graduating classes 2020. I truly cannot believe that in a couple days, we're officially done with high school. I want to take a little more time to just focus a little bit on Morningside. So Morningside High School is such a unique place because most of us grew up with each other. We were all fortunate enough to witness each other grow and strive. We hold Morningside close to our hearts because it's given us the chance to grow, to encourage one another, to do the things that we feared the most. But most of all, we hold Morningside close to our hearts because it's given us a sense of family. So for that, I'd like to thank my fellow peers, all of our teachers, our administrators, and our overall staff, because without you all, we wouldn't be striving as much as we are now. You have made this experience truly memorable, and for that, we appreciate you endlessly. And although it pains us to say goodbye, we know that it's for the best because we have to move on in order to find our next hello. Thank you.
Ms. Farrell, you did an amazing job also. The three of you make us so proud, and you represented your classes so beautifully. At this time, we would like to play a video honoring our senior class valedictorians and salutatorians. Mr. Morales, if you would kindly start the video. After the video, our high school principals will make very brief remarks. Thank you. Mr. Morales, oh, here we go. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Morales. And to our county administrator, Dr. Torres, our board members, as you know better than anyone, these students represent all the excellence that is in Inglewood Unified School District, and they represent their incredible classmates as well. These are 6 students that we were able to showcase today because of their academic achievements, but there are so many others. And so the remarks that Dr. Torres made celebrates every single one of our seniors in the class of 2020. We love you, we cherish you, and we wish you all the best. I'd like to now turn it back to the high school principals who will each take a minute or less to make remarks. We'll go in reverse alphabetical order, starting with the principal of Morningside High School, Ms. Tracy Golar.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lucas, and greetings to the county superintendent and the board members in the community of Inglewood. I want to extend my heartfelt admiration and appreciation for Morningside High School graduating class of 2020. This entire class deserves the honor of being distinguished because of their perseverance, their resiliency, and we have amongst us all of the heroes and sheroes of the city of Inglewood. We know that we will forever hold them dear in our hearts and in our memory because of the challenges of the times in which they have overcome. So thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for recognizing our most outstanding graduates of Morningside High School.
Thank you so much, Ms. Golar. Wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Tate, principal of Inglewood High School. Ms. Tate, I know you're on the line. I know your mic was fine earlier, but it's giving you a little trouble now. I'm going to go to Dr. Araya, and if your mic works, please let us know. We'll come right back to you. Thank you. Principal of City Honors, please, Ms. Saba Araya.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas.
No, forgive me, Dr. Saba Araya. Dr. Saba Araya.
You're so kind. Thank you, Dr. Lucas, and good evening, everyone. Class of 2020, you are resilient, you are remarkable and resourceful. Even though there may not be pomp because of our circumstances, I know that you will step into the future with courage, with passion, and most of all, purpose. Congrats on your hard work and dedication to academia. You made it, and for that, you should be proud.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raya.
Thank you.
Ms. Tate, okay. Ms. Tate is trying to get back in. I'm going to pause now for to turn it back over to Dr. Torres. If Ms. Tate is able to come back, hopefully we can give her a moment.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, congratulations to the class of 2020. As you end your kinder through 12th grade educational journey, I commend you for a job well done. All of your lessons learned in and outside the classroom are your stepping stones to this thing called life. As you move forward, always show good character because that's who you are. And the time is always right to do what's right. Congratulations again, and I wish you the best of everything.
Beautiful. I want to thank that high school principal. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Dr. Torres.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas, and congratulations again to our amazing class of 2020. We love you. We are so proud of all of your accomplishments, and we look forward to celebrating you very soon. I'm going to turn it over to our board members if you'd like to make any comments. Dr.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Torres. So first of all, congratulations to our Monarchs, Sentinels, and Jaguars on your success and being able to complete high school in the midst of a freaking pandemic, right? This hasn't occurred in our lifetimes. This is not a usual experience. And I think not only does it reflect your resilience, but it certainly reflects your ability to achieve, right? When folk often talk about the generations that became the greatest generations, that were the ones who went through some of the most difficult times, and they understood what it would take to help build a great society. So I really want to lift you all up for that. The other thing I want to leave with you all is just one bit of advice, and that is to be in service of others. I think we're seeing in the midst of this pandemic how important it is to step up and take care of each other with the high rates of unemployment and the fact that many of us have faced significant challenges in our own families during this time. I want to remind you of some words that Mahatma Gandhi once said. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Service is what helps to bring meaning to our lives, and is in finding meaning allows us to live and be our happiest selves. And so as you think about the meaning that you want to create in this world, and the flow that you like to be in, I want to encourage you to always remember to reach back and pull up, as well as look ahead and pay it forward, because at the end of the day, we're not on an island. We can't do this without each other. And it's because of you that our communities will be successful in the future. So thank you for your hard work. Thank you for overcoming these struggles and these challenges during this time. And I just want to give you all kudos on such a job well done. Dr. Falk?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I definitely want to share in congratulating all of our seniors. What a joyous time. It's a lot because you're so excited. You're leaving, you're starting your new life, going into adulthood, but you're also, to a certain degree, leaving your friends and all that you know. And so I hope that Inglewood Unified School District has prepared you for the wonderful, intelligent, knowledgeable, and successful individual that you are going to be in the future. We are going to be your family forever, here to support you. We look forward to seeing what contributions you make to the world. And please come back and share your good works with Inglewood Unified School District. We wish you the very best.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Dr. McGee, are you there? Great. Thank you so much. Ms. Grigsby?
I just want to say to our graduating seniors that we all remember that graduation is a new beginning. It is an opportunity to embrace some new experiences, to cherish these new experiences, build on what we gather here at Inglewood Unified School District, and to their own self, always be true. Congratulations.
Thank you. Ms. Evans?
Yes, graduates, this is Mrs. Evans. I'd like to congratulate you all on the accomplishments that you have achieved so far. I recognize a few of the pictures that went by there for our valedictorians and salutatorians. And I congratulate you and all of the rest of your class that you have accomplished this milestone, and you have many more in your lifetimes to accomplish. So I wish you all the best and all that you endeavor to do in your futures. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Torres.
Thank you so much, board members, for acknowledging our amazing class of 2020. And again, congratulations to our graduates. Congratulations to our families for providing the support that our graduates needed to accomplish this goal. Thank you to our principals for participating and sharing your great remarks with our students this evening. I'm going to move us to item 6 of our agenda. And this is public comments on agendized and non-agendized items. Members of the public who submitted a request for public comment form to be addressed by the county administrator and board will be read aloud during this meeting. The form was available 72 hours before the scheduled board meeting and was closed 2 hours before the start of this meeting. Requests were also accepted by mail to the county administrator at 401 South Inglewood Avenue, Inglewood, California 90301. The guidelines for public comment will be in accordance with Board Bylaw 9323. Ms. Montenegro, do we have any public comments on agenda items?
We do, Dr. Torres, and I'll start with our first person is Mr. Christopher Graver. And the first public comment says, it's on item 12A3. My name is Christopher Graver, representative for CalPro Local Union. I am speaking about layoffs of classified employees. This is the second layoff, and we hope and pray that it's the last one. We formally request to bargain over the effect of this layoff. The union has many concerns regarding the list. Skilled maintenance specialist, heat, air conditioning is one of the positions that is vacant. The question for everyone is, who will be doing this work? There were 2 workers doing this work. Now there will be none. IUSD has stated they do not want to use outside vendors. Therefore, this needs to be removed and IUSD needs to fill the 2 vacancies. This is a pattern at IUSD regarding classified employees. As part of the layoffs, the union is entitled to the list of vacancies. First, HR did not have a list ready. That's like a principal not knowing how many students are at their school. Finally, a list was provided and it's long and we are still checking if it is complete because we have had many problems with this list. Nurse technician. The district is proposing 1 position to be cut, which they claim is vacant. The fact is that the district is using an outside agency for much of this work, once again violating its promise and savings IUSD employees to perform this work. Currently, according to IUSD website, there are only 5 nurse technicians. Lastly, today the county superintendent stated there will be a need for more nurses due to the virus. Last week, the UC president stated that she and other top staff will take 10% pay from over $500,000 a year salary. Will IUSD do the same? The UC system has 250,000 students. IUSD has around 8,000, and you pay a top salary of 250,000. Food service. Many positions are being cut, and the union can't make sense why. Vacancies need to be filled for the workers who service the food. There is no need for more consultants. IUSD has hired consultants, one of which was the previous director. When IUSD had 18,000 with no consultant, just ask her. What is the overall savings? Layoffs have to be a lack of funds or lack of work. I have stated this in several board meetings. No one is being hired and 5 or 6 employees are terminated for one reason or another, but in the end, run the position go vacant for years. Currently, there are around 40 vacancies. Our next public comment is also from Mr. Christopher Graver around item 12A. The union is very concerned regarding this item. We have asked that all agenda and minutes be placed on the district website. They're not placed. In addition, the entire personnel commission rules are not on the site. FIGMET has written about this several times and nothing has happened. There needs to be a review of the status of the personnel commission. And our last and third public comment around agenda items is Ms. Chandra Cole, item 12A, certificated personnel roster. To Dr. Torres and the esteemed board members of IUSD, I send my greetings this evening. I wish that I could physically be present at the board meeting. However, this is not possible due to the stay safer at home orders. I have sent these remarks in regards to my separation from the district due to my planned retirement at the culmination of this school year. I have been privileged to teach in IUSD for over 30 years. I began my career at Highland Elementary, but spent the majority of my tenure at Payne STEAM Academy. During this time, I have enjoyed being a part of the Inglewood family. I have been fortunate to teach wonderfully gifted and enthusiastic students. Some of my former students have graduated from the most prestigious universities in our country. I have formed bonds and relationships with former students and their families, which led me to attend celebrations for graduations, weddings, and quinceañeras. You see, teaching was more than a job for me. It was grained in my soul, encompassing the very essence who I am as a person. So when I entered the classroom, yes, I was first a teacher, but I felt like paying became a second family for me. Furthermore, over the years, I have worked with some of the most gifted classified staff, teachers, and administrators who have garnered my utmost admiration and respect. My retirement is definitely bittersweet. I look forward to moving into the next phase of my life, but I will most certainly miss my paying family. I have already told my principal, Dr. Coffey, to anticipate my presence on the campus at Payne School in the near future. I am thankful to have had so many wonderful experiences as a teacher in IUSD. I would like to close by sharing a quote from Mary McLeod Bethune. Invest in the human soul. Who knows? It might be a diamond in the rough. This is the gift that we as educators give our students. Thank you for taking the time to read my remarks. Respectfully, Chandra Cole. And moving on to non-agenda items, our first public comment is from Mr. Christopher Graber. The union asked that the meeting end in honor of a classified employee who passed away. Her name is Marilyn Sevier. She worked at Morningside High School and she was a teacher assistant for many years. Second item, why is IUSD putting our members at risk? On May 11th, letter was sent out at 6:50 p.m. telling our classified employees to report to work on May 11th. This makes no sense. Our governor and the mayor of Los Angeles are warning citizens to stay at home. For most of these employees, there is no work at their job site. Workers such as ACEs, new duty aides, etc., teachers are safety at home, where all should be. The state of California passed legislation to provide the funds to keep workers and students safe, but IUSD demands that employees do busy work. The letter was very threatening and no concern regarding safety of employees. Why on May 11th, after weeks of employees worrying about the virus, does IUSD want workers to report to work? This needs to stop. Our members are performing frontline work in food service and other areas during the hazardous times to be outside your home. There are many barriers ahead to make school safe, and also the employees and we all need to work together to make this happen. Moving on to item 2, non-agenda items, Ms. Penny Slush. Good evening. I am speaking as a concerned employee and homeowner in this community. Most of you know me as Penny. Me, myself, believe we should only come 3 days a week. Safety first. We have families and elderly loved ones at home that we care for. When this first started, we didn't have the proper equipment. There are no guild lines or rules for safety within the district. Give the necessary people and supplies, then you can hold them accountable. You talk about teamwork, but yet and still you look down to us. We as classified employees did not get this district in a financial hardship. Yet you stretch us. You should have kept Charles. You had a valuable commodity in him. He did the necessary. Charles cared. Charles wore many hats in the district. He was here early and stayed late. He did his job for us. Now we have someone in charge of us who looks down on us. There's a lot of us out there who work hard. Charles was on the seat to hire custodians and they never hired them. HR had done nothing for the last 4 years for custodians. They never replaced the people who quit or retired. You need to hire people first and foremost. Then you could hold us accountable. Then and only then. I can be accountable when you're tiring me out, dragging me from site to site. Do you know the activities they have at all schools? You want to complain about us not doing our jobs? You could come here and judge us. We're one of the lowest paid employees in the district. Y'all say we're valuable, but you don't mean it. Give us whatever necessary to do the job. We need supplies. Y'all act as we are not relevant. We need supporters, not dictators. Our main job is to make sure everything is ready for the students. The students are the number one priority of the schools and this community. You have schools that do not have a full staff of custodians for whatever reason. I've been a worker in this district for 30 years. When I first started, we were fully staffed. I'm not blaming anyone because You inherited this. Excuse me. This financial problem, the district has not an MOT problem. Everyone that comes here pays themselves. You hire unnecessary people at the top, yet and still, we are the first department you guys always want to cut and critique. Then wonder why the schools aren't clean or the grounds aren't kept up. The teachers are always talking about contracting out for jobs. We can't maintain when their classrooms are full of unnecessary clutter. We are not here to clean their personal items like microwaves or refrigerators. Stop bashing MOT and collaborate with us to fix the problem. There's a lot of custodians who don't do their job, but it's a lot of us who do. For those of them in any department who don't do their job, they should be held accountable, not the whole department. Try being kind to one another. We are in a pandemic. Safety first. Thank you. Ooh, excuse me. And our last public comment is from Penny Slush. I would like to express to our union rep, Christopher Graver deserves respect, just like you guys respect the teacher union, because our lives matter also. And that concludes our public comments for this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Montenegro. We appreciate it. We're going to move on to item number 8, reporting out of closed session actions. So in closed session, the county administrator took action to approve the following settlement agreements. Office of Administrative Hearing, case numbers 202-002-0967, 202-001-1086, CS 09-2019-2020, and SE 10-2019-2020. Also in closed session, the county administrator approved the assignment of one certificated administrator. And I'm really excited to announce that after a long search, we have identified an amazing principal for City Honors Preparatory High School. I wanted to take this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Saba Araya. She is truly an example of homegrown talent at its finest here in the Inglewood Unified School District. From her elementary school years when she was a student at Bennett Q Elementary to her career as a teacher in our district, she is really a talent here, and we are so proud of Dr. Araya. I'm also in the process of finalizing the assignment of a new principal for Morningside High School and also the assistant principal for Woodworth Monroe K-8, and I expect to make those announcements in the coming week. Also, I wanted to inform our board and community that we are approving the assignment of a new classified administrator. He is our new executive director of fiscal services. And as all of you know, this position has been vacant for quite some time. It's been actually 10 months. And we are so excited to welcome Mr. Holmes to the Inglewood Unified School District family. And I'm going to ask if Ms. Duck and I could please share a few words. Congratulations.
Yes, absolutely, Dr. Torres. It has been some time. This is one of the most important positions in regard to the fiscal side. And so I'm so pleased that Mr. Carlton Holmes is working with us. Just to share a little bit about him, he was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, has one brother, 3 sisters, 6 children, 6 grandchildren, is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. And in regard to his education, he received his Bachelor of Science in Accounting, did some graduate study in the areas of public finance, and has over 14 years of experience in finance and accounting. Lastly, I'd like to close with some of his experience in regard to where he's worked. He was the prior finance manager for the city of Palmdale, an internal auditor for the state of Louisiana, a finance director for the Plymouth Canton Schools of Michigan, as well as the budget manager in the city of Highland Park in Michigan. So we are so pleased he has joined our team, and we're very excited to begin working with him. Thank you.
Congratulations again and welcome to our family. So I'm very pleased to introduce our board and community to Mr. Holmes, our new Senior Executive Director of Fiscal Services. Would you like to share a few words?
Thank you, I would. Well, I feel very honored and very grateful for the opportunity to serve the Inglewood Unified School District. And I'm looking forward to working with the administration as well as teachers and administrators who are looking for the best services and education products for our community. And so I'm just choked up, but I'm ready to go. And just looking forward to get to work.
Thank you. Congratulations and welcome again.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're moving on to item number 9, student reports, and I'm so honored to introduce you to one of our amazing students, Elizabeth Perez. She is a student from City Honors International Preparatory High School. Ms. Perez.
Good evening, Dr. Torres, board members, staff, and community members. My name is Elizabeth Perez, and I am a freshman at City Honors International Preparatory School. This evening, I'll be speaking to you about 2 amazing programs at my school, our International World Language Program and Entrepreneurial Studies Program. This year, I had the opportunity to be enrolled in the Mandarin 1 class with Ms. Huang. Over the course of 2 semesters, our class has learned introductory words, pronunciation of words, and writing characters. As well, my elective for the year was Entrepreneurial Studies 1. In this class, I was encouraged to create my own business, write a business plan, and enter in the UCLA Business Plan Competition, which will be held at the end of May virtually. My business is called Dough, and the concept is to produce and distribute bread without the crust. This takes away the struggle that parents with picky eaters undergo to create sandwiches their kids will like. To help prepare for the competition, during school closures, Project ECHO has introduced our class to the Toastmasters Youth Leadership Program. Students participating in this program learn to overcome shyness, organize and present a speech, control their voice, vocabulary, and gestures, listen carefully to others, and evaluate other speeches using constructive feedback, letting the speaker know what they did well and how they can improve. Twice a week, our class works this organization on Zoom. Since working with Toastmasters, I have reduced my ums and so's, used purposeful gestures, and got accustomed to being on camera showing my face. These programs made my freshman year at City Honors quite enjoyable. They were a fun and educational experience. 谢谢大家聆听我在委员会的报告. Congratulations to the class of 2020.
So, Ms. Perez, can you get back on the line? I'd like to see you again.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see your face. You're so beautiful. So I just wanted to congratulate you. I think that you're amazing.
Thank you.
Did an outstanding job of providing your student report. And I just wanted to say that I'm so impressed. You're an amazing leader here in our district. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for your participation this evening. You're so impressive. Thank you, Dr. Araya, for working with us to identify an amazing student to share a report with us this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you, Elizabeth. Good job.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So I'm going to ask our board members if you have any questions or comments for our amazing student. Dr. Scorza.
Yeah, just thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having you share your board reports, and we're wishing you just a great time. And I think it's a reflection of how amazing our students are. when you come from Inglewood, just know that you're part of this family. Know that you come from greatness. Know that you will reflect greatness, and know that we will forever be proud of you and the hard work you've done. So, thank you. Other board members, would you like to make any comments?
I just want to say congratulations and thank you so much for those amazing reports.
And I would like, this is Alice Grigsby, like to say to her, I wish her the best in her competition at UCLA later this month in terms of her entrepreneur project. Thank you.
Thank you so much, board members. I appreciate your support, and congratulations again, Ms. Bettis, for all of your achievements. And we look forward to supporting you and celebrating with you when you graduate in a few years. So thank you again for joining us. We're moving to item number 10, reports and presentations. And we actually have several reports this evening. We're going to start off with Ms. Stock and I providing us with a report on our third interim for the Inglewood Unified School District. Ms. Stock and I.
Good evening, Dr. Torres, Board of Education, Cabinet, and Community. I'm Christine Dakanai, and I serve as your Chief Business Official. This evening, I'll be presenting the third interim. Mr. Morales, if you could please put that up on the screen. Thank you. So the purpose of the third interim report, just to be clear, this is not a requirement. Second interim, when I presented about 2 months ago, we had and still have a positive certification. However, that was in March 15th. And due to the drastic changes in the budget because of COVID-19, we found that it was extremely important that we look at the budget now, including the May revise that the governor provided about a few weeks ago. So the third interim report will reflect changes to the budget as of March 15th. It provides updates of financial information, to the board, the state administrator, county administrator, oversight agencies, and stakeholders. And it actually provides actuals from July 1st, 2019 through April 31st, 2020. I think on March 15th, the site closures happened immediately after, and the May revise has really sent shockwaves through the state. We understand that this information is fluid and that the federal and the state government will still react. However, we wanted to be transparent as far as where we are today. Next slide, please. So the annual timeline, I wanted to show just from a fiscal perspective where we are today. So on the top, you'll see that June 30th, 2019, that's when we adopted our budget. So in a month, we'll be adopting our new budget for 2021. First interim, we had presented that back in December. And then the second interim was presented 2 months ago. And today I'll be presenting the third interim. So that takes us to a full cycle, a budget cycle of the different deadlines that we have. Next slide, please. There have been some significant assumptions that we included in the third interim. In my assumptions narrative, we really documented the different assumptions that we used for 1920, as well as the multiple year projections. I think the biggest thing that we'll see is that this incorporates the May revised COLA projections of negative 7.92% when we had expected a positive 2.31%. It also incorporates a projection of the CARES Act of around 5 million, 5.3 million one-time funding for 2021. And of course, the following year, we reduced it because we don't know if we're going to receive it or not. Lastly, we incorporate the revised fiscal stabilization plan for 2021 and 21-22. And although we are projecting an operational deficit in 21-22, DOF and FICMAT will essentially be the ones to recommend the amount when the state approves their budget for 21-22 in regard to AB 1840. Next slide, please. So the financial management, as far as what happened in May revised and what we're looking at for future budget considerations. So we went over what the fiscal stabilization plan was back in March, and we've had to revisit that just because of all the additional changes. We are potentially looking at, unfortunately, additional reductions. We're looking at that negative COLA. We've looked at a reduction in state and lottery revenue as a result of COVID-19. As well as deficits and deferrals to our funding for the next year. Next slide, please. So with the budget development, as I mentioned earlier, the governor's May revision really suspended the 2.3 statutory COLA, and then we had to add the 10% reduction. The net effective rate was 7.92. What I want to walk you through is the chart below. So what you'll see, let's look at K through 3, for example. In 1920, we were receiving $7,700 per student for K through 3. What we were projecting when the initial January revise came out was a 2.31%. In dollars, that meant 178. So we were going into this year, the 2021 year, assuming that we will be receiving 7,880. The May revise hit, COVID-19, the pandemic, and this is what we're faced with today. So what you'll see is what we're looking at for 2021 is instead of 7,880, we're only looking at $7,000.92. That's about $800 less per student that we have to plan for. Next slide, please. In regard to budget development, one of the things that we looked at—
I'm sorry, Christine, I don't mean to interrupt you there, but can you go back to that previous slide and just briefly touch on it just a bit more?
Yes, absolutely. So, Dr. Scorza, for example, I think you'll see that for 9th through 12th graders, we were supposed to receive $9,500 per student. Because of the May revise, we're essentially looking at $1,000 less. And so, when it comes to budget development and planning, that's something we have to consider as part of the equation. When you look at our funding and our budget, most of our funding comes from LCFF. This is our main source. And so it's extremely drastic from what the January governor's budget looked like to what happened as a result of the pandemic and COVID-19. So this is where we are today. This is the information we received from the governor as of the May revise.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely. So what does that mean in dollars? So for example, the third interim projects that we'll be receiving around $95 million in LCFF dollars. With that reduction in COLA for the 2021 year, we're potentially looking at a reduction of around $13 million. And so those are things that we need to contemplate and prepare for as a district. I think the positive thing about the third interim, though, next slide, is that we are projecting to receive federal money one time through the CARES Act. That's around $5 million or so. We're also receiving one-time SB 117 money, few $100,000. And because of the reductions that we made this year and us sticking to our fiscal stabilization plan, we'll be receiving around another $5 million in AB 1840 money. And since we've closed, we've also had some expenditure savings. So in regard to 1920, the things that we looked at, the closures have happened since March 15th. So we were really able to save in utilities, in supplies, transportation, substitutes, save in other areas like consultants, as well as in our NPS and NPA, just because of the reduced number of services. So that was, as a result of COVID-19 and because of the closures, there were essentially some savings. But what I wanted to go over on the next slide is really what was the big difference between second interim, March 15, and third interim. So you'll see that we increased our Title I revenue by $379,000. That's a true up that we do after we get the total funding from the state. Because City Honors High School, Principal Araya's school turned into a charter school, we actually get funded on the current year, so we'll see a bump there. We did decrease in facilities and rentals because we know that we're not going to be open for the remainder of the year, so that was reduced. So essentially, the net increase to our restricted and unrestricted general fund balance was around $2 million. And then, as I mentioned in the prior slide, there have been some savings in expenditures. For example, we reduced our contracts and utilities, as well as overtime. And we also had a number of vacancies and salary savings. So the net of that is around 1.3. So at the end of the day, our projected increase to our ending fund balance is around $3.4 million. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to walk you through is when we're looking at the unrestricted general fund to essentially show you where we started the year, what the first interim looked like, the second interim, as well as the third, and really show you the variances. So as I explained in more detail in the prior slide, that was a combination of unrestricted and restricted, and this is now just looking at the restricted. So the ending fund balance, if I could direct you to the fourth column, is an increase of $2.4 million. That plus what we had initially thought, we're looking at $7.1 million and actually changing our reserve from a 3%, which is the minimum requirement, to 5.49. So that's extremely important considering all the loss of funding that we had talked about, potentially from the May revise. Next slide, please. So what does that mean for our projected operating deficit, our stabilization plan, and AB 1840? Because of all the one-time money that we received this fiscal year for 2021, again, that is the CARES funding, AB 1840 funding, SB 117, we essentially are looking at a zero surplus for 2021. However, it's important to note that the following year, those funds are gone. And so what we're looking at in the 21-22 year, absent of our fiscal stabilization plan for 2021, we're looking at a potential deficit of $18.2 million. Once we implement the remainder of our fiscal stabilization plan, that's around $3 million. And at the end, the total deficit is at 15.2. Now we're projecting that next year is the last year that AB 1840 will come into play, and that still needs to be verified by FICMAT and DOF. But essentially, they will be funding 25% of that 15.2. So what we're looking at as far as additional cuts is 10.6 million. I think that the good thing is that we're not even in 2021 yet, so thereby we have time to plan. We have time to react. It's not something that as soon as June comes that we're gonna have to face. We've really done a great job with implementing the stabilization plan. We've done a great job of watching our expenditures, and so essentially in the 2021 year, we've bought our we have some time to make some different changes based on the way that the May revise came out. But for 21-22, this is where we need to really start planning. This is where we need to have some really difficult conversations, continue to engage with the county and the state, and of course, we'll update the information as we receive it. When I present the budget next month, this might look completely different, only because that's how fluid this information is coming from the state. But I think it's important to know that we as a cabinet are committed to ensuring the success of our students, our parents, and our community, and that we will go through this in the most diligent manner to ensure that our students will still end on top. Thank you. Any questions?
So thank you so much for that, Christine. Really appreciate you taking the time to share this with us. It is a little bit heartening to hear that our fiscal position is not as dire, at least as we thought it would be. But I think the question that I have is, how will this reflect for next year? I understand that we are talking, and we're still figuring out our plans. But what impact will this have upon us for next year, as well as AB 1840 and the support we're supposed to be receiving from the state?
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Scorza. So for 2021, AB 1840 was actually written as part of the May Revise. And so in the May Revise, what we had been promised is the amount of 5.8 million, and that was actually written in there. And that was a result of FICMAT ensuring that we implemented our fiscal stabilization plan back in March. And so that's the funds that we are going to get. The one that may change, and the one that we still need to find out, as this information rolls out, is the CARES Act. The CARES Act is 90% of our Title I funding that'll be used to essentially help with our distance learning and investing in that area. And so we have this cash that's coming in for the 2021 year. And because of our savings this year, compounded with that, we're looking at netting at zero at the end of the year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dakanai. Are there any other questions or comments from board members?
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Dakanai, for that presentation. I think I almost fell out of my seat when I saw the $18 million anticipated deficit for 21, 22. Is that the one? So I know that we have been making a lot of great strides, and to a certain degree, we just have to do a little praying that everything happens the way we anticipated happening. And I know we already took a loss, but we really need to keep our fingers crossed that some of the other funding comes through. But I mean, at the end of the day, we're out there, we're doing what we need to do, and working hard to bring the funding in. But, who would have anticipated COVID-19 would have devastated our budget like this? So a little bit disappointed, and hopefully we can get through this like we have been.
Yeah, and you know what, Dr. Falk, thank you for that. But just so that we're all on the same page, Inglewood isn't unique in this particular position. All districts throughout the state of California are also experiencing the same thing. And so it's not a lack of planning, and it's not a lack of anything else. Aside from that, we weren't prepared for a pandemic, and neither was any other district. And so I believe that with the leadership of our county administrator, our board, and our cabinet, we will get through this.
Right, I do too. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Dakanai, for your presentation. Thank you, board members, for your questions. We're going to move on to item 10B. And Ms. Dakanai, together with our partner from Cordova, Mr. DeCastro, they're going to be providing us with an updated facilities condition assessment. So welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Torres. So what we'll be presenting next is the facilities condition assessment. And really what the FCA, or facilities condition assessment, is it looks at different components to essentially develop a facilities master plan. So this is a piece of that. what we looked at is essentially the infrastructure, what's wrong with our buildings, and what would the cost be if we were to look at replacing every roof, every AC system, replacing HVAC, looking at the floors. And the main purpose of it is just to get an understanding of per school, per site, in today's dollars, what would it take to essentially improve the buildings and the infrastructure. And so the study that we did is actually a 20-year study. And Mr. DeCastro will go through the details of that in the following slide.
Thank you, Ms. Takanai, and good evening, Dr. Torres, distinguished board members, district cabinet, and Inglewood community. I just wanted to briefly share with you our findings from the facility assessment research, but first wanted to quickly explain the scope of work. So the efforts needed to provide this type of information required an evaluation from Team Veritas, formerly known as EMG, who is a consultant that specializes in facility assessments. Their efforts actually started back in 2017, where they actually visited all the district properties, reviewed construction documents, and all applicable maintenance records in order to become familiar with the existing conditions of each facility and be able to formulate a remedy for the deficiencies. Bureau Veritas then revisited 5 schools that have recently completed construction or is in the process of in construction now in order to update their original findings and provide an up-to-date assessment for the district, which included cost adjustments due to the yearly inflation. So here I know this is a little difficult to see, but I did want to give a visual on how the costs and quantities were organized to get the estimated totals. As I mentioned earlier, the consultant visited each campus, reviewed construction and maintenance documents, and from there, they provided an estimate from the total cost of replacement of specified items starting from year 2023, which is the potential year funding would be available to utilize. For example, this is a quick snapshot of the spreadsheet created for Building C here at Payne Elementary. It provides a description of what the item is, the quantity based on the count or the square footage of a certain room, which is then multiplied by the estimated unit cost for that specified item to be replaced. So take, So take this 4-ton rooftop unit here. The life expectancy of a unit is about 15 years. It then shows the actual age of the unit and its remaining use of life before its recommended replacement. So these units are expected to last 15 years and is in year 5 since its initial installation, with 10 years remaining in what is to be in good working order. So it is then forecasted to be replaced in the year 2033, 10 years from 2023, when its $14,000 replacement value is included in the total amount for the building. So this is valuable information, so management is aware to make sure we don't replace units too early as to not take full advantage of its life expectancy. But we also don't want to wait too long to replace it, as with inflation, replacement costs will be driven up. And I'll wait for that to go. So the same goes for this vinyl tile line item here. The table shows it is in year 3 since it's being installed, and it is expected to last about 15 years. So after the remaining 12 years of life expectancy, it'll cost about $23,000 to replace the 3,000 square feet of tile in the year 2035. So all these items are then added up to make up the cost for Building C and incorporated in the total replacement cost shown for Payne Elementary School as a whole. So you'll see this $527K here is included in Payne, this Payne Elementary School table as a whole for Building C, which totals about $4.7 million for the entire Payne Elementary School. So in summary, the report quantifies the cost of repair or replacement of the district facilities for the next 20 years, starting 2023 through 2043. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide, the table shows all the properties and the campuses included for the district and their respective values. But in total, the replacement value of all district facilities from 2023 through 2043 is estimated to be at $422 million. And some key findings we discovered are the following 5 schools that are estimated to require the most capital investment for the next 20 years. The first 2 are the 2 of the district high schools. Inglewood High School is at 99.3 million, Morningside at 43 million. And next we have Highland Elementary at 23.5 million, Kelso Elementary at 22.2 million, and Sentinel Elementary at 20 million. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to Ms. Dakanai for the summary.
Thank you, Mr. DeCastro. So I think that, the FTA, the Facilities Condition Assessment, really just will help us show what are our needs as a district and essentially how to prioritize it. We want to review it, and it's really part of the facilities master plan, and it'll play such a huge factor when we're thinking about funding. And this is really, when you look at our entire district with all the sites, our needs 422 million, and our students deserve the best. And so what we want to start talking about is how do we go down this path to providing the right type of facilities to ensure that student learning and student environment is conducive to what we want for our students. So the next presentation will actually consist of, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the next presentations, and this will be with Mr. Adam from Fieldman Rolap, as well as straddling, and we'll be hearing from our community outreach folks as far as what is our strategy and how do we engage the community, because there might be some things that we see as needs, but there's also other areas that we might need to cover as well. So with that said, I'd like to transition to Mr. Adam from Fieldman Rolap and Associates, as well as Stradling, our legal bond counsel.
Christine, before you move to the next section, I just had a quick question about what was just shown for Highland Elementary School needing so much work done. And that's a relatively new school. Why does that school need so much work and it's brand new? Can anybody answer that?
That's a really good question, Ms. Evans. So what I can do is I could, find out specifically. I think the details of what Mr. DeCastro was showing was it could be a number of different things. I think, for example, what we used was Payne Elementary, but it tells us specifically from whether something's an exterior wall or if it's a roof or if it's, something else that needs to be replaced. So what I'll do is we'll make sure to pull up the details for that school and get that to you.
Okay, because there are so many other schools in the district that are older than that one, and they weren't listed. So that's my question.
Yeah, I think it was relatively new 20 years ago, right? I think when we had Measure K dollars to upgrade that school, that was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so you're right, Ms. Evans, that it has had some support, but I think the life of those buildings continue to deteriorate over time. And when the state defunded maintenance, that also makes it very difficult as well to sustain and fix some of the problems that may emerge from these school sites. So it's a challenge. I can totally see when we can look at a new school and go, wow, why does it have those needs? But it has to do really with the wear and tear and the ability to maintain those facilities. And when we're not funded by the state to do that, it becomes a hardship on the district.
Thank you.
So thank you, Ms. Evans. So with that being said, I'm going to ask Mr. Adam Bauer to present on item 10C.
Great, thank you. And if there's a presentation, oh, there it comes. Thank you very much. And thank you for everyone's time. My name is Adam Bauer. We also have Jason Chung on the line. And we both are from Fieldman Rolap and Associates, and we serve as your municipal advisor. You also have representatives from your bond counsel on the call that may chime in from time to time. but for the majority of the presentation, I'll be walking you through it. We have a lot of information in here, and there's some slides I'll try to cover very quickly, and but there's other slides that I'll slow down and try to really give you a lot of detail on. But we know there's a lot of things that you're considering and want to make sure we covered a lot of materials. So if we could please turn to the next slide. So on the next slide, we just have some district background and then some details on a potential GEO bond in the future, and you can see that table of contents. So next slide, please. Once again, next slide. On slide 3, what we detailed there is the district's historical assessed value, and you've had some really large increases over the last few years. When you look at fiscal year 2018-19, you had a higher than a 9% assessed value increase. And then in fiscal year 19-20, you had greater than 22% increase. Just to put this in perspective, a lot of numbers that we use are in the 4% range, not nearly the range that we have here. And you certainly have some large developments that are driving a lot of this. But that's been very helpful for you in your bond program. But there's a number I want you to keep in mind, and that's in the middle of the page there, and that's a 4.93 number, and that is your 25-year average. We typically want to be below that number when we're using projections, and I'll explain why in some detail later. Next slide, please. On slide 4, what we're detailing here is the district's rating. You have a Baa2. That is a bit lower than what we see with a lot of other districts. And so hopefully over time, we can work to bring that up. And as we bring that up, we'll be able to get a lower cost of borrowing for your taxpayers. So that's something to always be monitoring. It shouldn't be the driving factor, but it's a factor that we should always monitor as we move forward. But the rating agencies have identified some real strengths, and that's your large, resilient tax base, and you're growing out even more so now. And then the ad valorem security pledge in California. You have had some declines in enrollment, and your reserve position, they detailed there as being imbalanced. So these are things that we should just monitor, especially during after the last presentation we just saw, is decisions that are made now will impact the rating down the road. Good news for all of us is the credit spreads between the highest rating and the shortest ratings are a little bit higher than they were a few months ago, but they're not as dramatic as they were in the past. But so the district currently rests at the Baa2. So if we could turn to the next page. What we've detailed on slide 5 is just a summary of the district's debt. This is all your bonds outstanding. There's a series there, 2012 Series A, which could be in the future refinanced. If you look at that call date there to the far right, that is when these bonds could be refinanced with no penalty and on a tax-exempt basis. And like I said, we'll detail that a bit more. I detailed that in the first bullet point there, where we talk a bit about how that might work in conjunction with the future bond series to be able to refinance that one along the way. So you also have some COPs outstanding, and so we've just listed that there as well. So if we could go to slide 6, please. On slide 6 is we tried to put all this together in more of a user-friendly format. The district has 2 GEO bond measures outstanding currently, your 1998 and your 2012, and those are up the top there. Your voters have supported you in an overwhelming fashion. We very rarely see percentages in the 70s, much less in the 80s. So your community has been very supportive of you in your bond programs. To the bottom there, each series of bonds, to the far left of that table, we show tax rate per 100,000, and then the bar charts show how much taxes are being paid by the community, those members of the assessed value, between now and the last maturity there. And each series of bonds represent colors, so you can kind of target kind of how those bonds are getting repaid over time. And then to the far right, which takes up the length of the slide, we're just detailing there what the tax rate is per 100,000. And as a result of assessed value increasing so dramatically over the last few years, your amount per 100,000 has dropped to your overall community. So that as that new kind of massive commercial development has come on, they have taken the burden of a portion of your GEO bonds. So if we could turn to slide 7, please. Okay, this is almost impossible to see in the format we're in, so I apologize. But what I'll do is I'll give you some takeaways from this. Some takeaways from this is the district, that yellow line there, that's like the median district. So that's the tax rate for a typical district within LA County. And then the green line, just a bit above that, so a few notches above, is where Inglewood USD stands today. And then the green line above that represents if you had an additional GeoBond measure, what the tax rate would be and how you compare to a lot of your peers. So just try to give you some perspective of other LA County districts that you compare to. So when meeting with district staff, we will typically print this out on 11 by 18, and it's still difficult to see. So when we've shrunk it down to, I don't know what this is, 4 by 8 here, it certainly is even more difficult to see, so I apologize. So slide 8, please, and move on 9. So on slide 9, what we detailed here is some of the GeoBond guidelines, and these are, when you look at a Proposition 39 GeoBond, and here's some of the descriptive features of it, you can see that for a unified district, you don't go above 2.5 without a waiver, and we showed you that earlier. Also, $60 per 1,000 is the maximum that a unified district could look at. One of the real benefits of a Prop 39 GeoBond measure is that it only requires 55% voter approval, where a non-Prop 39 GeoBond measure or a Prop 46 GeoBond measure, that requires 2/3 voter approval. Now, why are we talking about this in May when there's a November election? And that's this next bullet point. And that is a GeoBond measure must be placed on the ballot 88 days prior to the election. And so that typically falls in the first week of August. But there's a whole lot of work to do between now and then should the board decide that they want to put a GeoBond measure on the ballot. So now, after the GeoBond election, if it's successful and the board made a decision to put one on the ballot, there's a Citizens Oversight Committee that gets appointed, and there's some annual audits that follow. And then we have listed on 9 some of the items that would need to be, that could be funded. So if we could turn to slide 10, please. So what develops a finance plan? One is municipal interest rates. And we are in good times now. We were about a month and a half ago, rates went up dramatically, but they've returned to near historic lows. A lot of the longer maturities that are for tax exempt, we are less than 0.5% of the time as low as we are today. Taxable is a little bit different. Tax amount per 100,000, the need for funds, and then the requirement to spend down bond proceeds within 3 years. And so you have your bond counsel on the line. They can give a lot more detail to this. But when we do bond sales, we typically want to make sure you're going to be able to spend the money within 3 years. That actually coincides very nicely with protecting your taxpayers, and I'll show you how that works in a moment. But this is an item to be thinking about, is when you sell taxes and bonds, the IRS has some rules about how you have to spend down those proceeds. So next slide, please. I have this slide shown many times, but I'm going to only walk through it once and then go to a summary slide. On slide 11, what we've detailed here is assuming the board wanted to go out with a $30 tax rate. Red line, that chart in the middle there to the left shows $30 per 1,000. That red line represents the maximum amount of bonds you could sell with that, or at that tax rate. And then the bar charts represent each series of bonds. So right now there's no bar charts outstanding, no bonds have been issued. But let's say bonds were issued in 2021, and I'm jumping down to the bottom table there. If we issue about $24.6 million of the bonds and try to front load some principal in those early years, we could see that those navy blue lines represent the 2021 bond repayment and how your taxpayers are paying that over time. And now you go along and you spend the 24.6 and you come back 2 years later and you sell another series of bonds. Now that light blue gets layered in there. What's really good about that is it fits within that spend down requirement that your bond counsel can give more details on. But it also, we are projecting a 4% growth factor here. Now you have far exceeded that in the recent years, but let's say you don't. If you don't, we have an ability to recalibrate and make sure we get back to a position of honoring what you told taxpayers versus being over what you promised them for many, many years. And so each time we issue a series of bonds, we get to recalibrate. Did our assumptions hold? Most of the time, our assumptions are conservative. So when we get to that second series of bonds, we're able to say, you know, you're able to issue about $300,000 more than we originally projected. That's exactly what you want. But also if the counter happens where our projections don't hold, every time we, like I've said before, every time we issue a new series of bonds, we get to recalibrate that. So now, if we flip through the next one, you're going to see $40. So slide 12. The next one after that's 50. Then the maximum. And I have a summary sheet as we go through this. And then we have something called a tax rate extension. And this basically says, if you look to the far right there, those blue bars are over the red line. So you might ask, you know, how is that happening? And that is because this one is set up so that it wraps around an existing GEO-bond measures. But it says we will take that one into consideration when we're selling bonds. And you can see it cuts the amount available to you. And the survey should be something we look toward to determine whether this is a reasonable plan or not. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So when I realize now when we were uploading this with on the Google Docs, there's a scenario that got missed in here. But I'll go through what this table says, and then I'll show you what that scenario that was missed in here. So the far left is all the scenarios, 30, 40, 50, 60, and that extension idea. Power amount, project amount is probably what you're most focused on right now, is what can you build with these different scenarios. Total debt service, how much your taxpayers have to repay of this. Repayment ratio, notice that tax rate extension option has a higher repayment ratio than all the rest. And that's because we have to wrap around all those shorter maturities and issue longer term debt to wrap around that. And then to the far right there, what we show there is what does this cost your typical taxpayer within your community? And you can see what each one of those costs. Now the scenario that I want to highlight here is another scenario at $60 per 1,000. And here we wanted to show what would it look like for the district to get $240 million in par amount. In there we'd have a repayment term of 30 years. Most of these others have 25 years. And then we'd have $238 million available for projects, $469 million, $253 for repayment, a repayment ratio of 1.96, so very close to all the non-extension scenarios. And then the final repayment would be in around 2052 timeframe. So that was a scenario that we know the district has looked at in the past, and also that with some of the rapid growth in assessed value the district has achieved is a very worthwhile one for the district to consider. And I think the presentation after this can help give the district some perspective about how to look at which option to choose as we go forward. So next slide, please. And so one of the things we looked at on slide 17 is the pros and cons of looking at a 2020 GEO bond election. In 2020, we have a presidential item on the ballot. That's really positive because it generates a lot of people out to vote. So you're hearing from the widest audience that you could hear from. And generally, when you have a large turnout, that's usually pretty favorable for districts. And like I said, the presentation after me, you can get more into details after that. So you can fund the projects you need to fund. You get the money in 2021 versus waiting longer for it. We are at historic lows in municipal interest rates. Now, no guarantees that holds between now and 2021, but there's no immediate signs that we're going to have some large increases in municipal interest rates. So you're likely to be able to be in an environment where you're borrowing at low cost. This last bullet point is TBD. Let's see if this turns out to be true. I've only heard of it being true with one district yet. Hopefully, with some of the slowdown in construction, we'll see it be more favorable. But we may be in a favorable bidding environment with some of the slowdown that we've seen with the statewide shutdowns related to COVID-19. So what are some cons to looking at 2020? In March of 2020 was one of the worst election cycles we've seen. And like I said, there's another group behind me that can address that in more detail. But March of 2020, school districts did very poorly at the ballot. There's who knows what this summer looks like. We feel like we're opening right now. I mean, you can't watch any news station without hearing one way or the other about how it's going. But does that last throughout the summer? And does that last into November as we're looking at needing people to vote. Generally, in LA County, the tax rates are higher than other places, but within LA County, we're right within that range. Then, when you're thinking about all your stakeholders and some of the sensitivity around asking voters for a larger amount of taxes, given that we very well could be entering into a recession, that's a con. We just tried to frame some of the things that districts are thinking about right now when they consider this, and here are some of the ones we identified. I'm sure you could identify others. Next slide, please. So what we try to do here is just outline some timelines, and this can be changed, and we're not, other than some of the deadlines, we're not locked into anything here. But we looked at presenting this overall big picture to you now, present bond measure and documents to review in the June timeframe, ask the board to consider the measures to put in the ballot in July. And I believe on the final version of this, Carlos from Stratling has identified it could all be done in one resolution versus two resolutions. And then finally, the deadline to call for election, that August 7th timeline. And then finally, the election day would be November 3rd, 2020, should the board call for that cycle. So next slide, please. Great. And just to be really clear, the fact that we had the wrong information was my fault. I was trying to be helpful and didn't go through the proper channels at our office and just grabbed the wrong presentation when I was trying to help upload here today. So I apologize for that. So any questions related to the finance plan? Great. Well, both Jason and I will stick around, and I know there's a presentation after this. Should that presentation generate any questions related to what we shared here, we'll both be available for questions.
Thank you for sharing that presentation as well. Really appreciate it. I think the questions I think we're having, at least I just want to be mindful about is, let's say there's a family whose house has an assessed value of, and I think you may have had that. Maybe we can go back to that slide briefly, but has an assessed value of, let's say, $400,000 or $500,000. Not the same as market value, but assessed value of $400,000 or $500,000 at a $60 tax rate. What would their annual tax bill look like?
So there's a slide that we've used, and I don't want to give exact numbers here. Jason's, actually, it is here on slide on this slide. What we look, if you look at that first bullet point there, the median assessed value for a home within your boundaries is $271,620, and for that the column to the far right represents how much those would all be paying for this. For a measure of these amounts per 1,000.
So you're saying $141 is a $60 tax rate exemption, and that would be, I'm sorry, no, it's number one. You said it's number one?
So the first bullet point there, so the first bullet point represents the median AV for a home within the district boundaries.
And this is Jason Chung with Fill and Roll App. Hi, everyone. And to answer your question, for a family with an assessed value of $500,000, you take that $500,000 figure and divide it by 100,000, so you have a factor of 5, and multiply that by whatever your hypothetical tax rate would be, which would be $60. So that would be $300 per year for a family with an assessed value of $500,000.
That's what I thought. I mean, I just want to be sure so families know exactly what this would cost them at these different rates. And we want to be really sort of clear, because we do have elders in our communities and there is tax sensitivity, right? We're in the midst of a pandemic as well. And so I think we just want to be mindful and be plain spoken about what this will actually cost families if we were to move forward with this. And so if the median assessed value in our community is around $271,000, what we're essentially saying is that this will be somewhere around $150,000 to $175 based upon the median value. Is that correct? Per year.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hi,
Great.
this
Thank
is
you.
Dr. Falk. I have one question along those lines. So taking what you said, $300 annually, how does that work? Is that indefinite or is that for a certain period of time? How does that add into the tax claim, annually?
Could we go back a few slides? So go back maybe 2 slides. So this highlights that. So slide 14 shows for this GeoBond measure, it would be, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble reading it. Is that 2049? This GeoBond would be fully repaid. But I want to give you 2 examples here. If your assessed value continues to grow anywhere near the levels it's growing at now, you'll likely issue this much sooner than this, and you'll pay it off sooner. If your assessed value grows below the 4% we use in these projections, you'll likely issue it slower than this. So if we hit a little bit below your average assessed value, you're pretty close to 5. We're using 4 for our numbers here. This would be, your taxpayers would be done repaying this by 2049.
So on average, you're saying that bonds take somewhere between, I guess, 20 years or 10 to 15 years. So we're still paying on Measure GG bonds, on the Measure GG bond then.
That's correct. So typically, oh, sorry.
So then that's, and I'm one of those people. So that is definitely can be a problem as we, as people raise those issues. Well, aren't we paying on a bond already? And now we're getting ready to implement a new one. That's cause to pause. So.
Well, I think what we're.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, and I don't know. It's not Jason. I'm sorry. I didn't catch your name. My apologies for that. But I think what Dr. Falk is referring to is really helpful. And if you can just help us understand this so that the community can also understand this. If, for example, we take our Measure K dollars and we take our Measure GG assessed rates and what we're all paying on our taxes, when I get my tax bill, it says Unified Schools. And I have a certain amount of money I pay every 6 months for Unified Schools. We're as taxpayers are not thinking about this based upon this $175 amount itself solely, right? We're thinking about this at whole. So can you maybe speak to that?
Yeah, and if we can go back a few more slides, we actually tried to show this with all your existing measures. But so the tax bill is going to have all the GEO bonds that still have bonds outstanding. All those will be on the tax bill. And one of the things I think the district should be sensitive to and try to get some feedback from the community about how they feel through a survey is asking about the prior GEO bonds and how that impacts their decision going forward. But certainly your existing GEO bond measures are still on the tax rolls and continue to be. And that's not uncommon to have more than one GEO bond measure that taxpayers are repaying.
Okay.
Can you also speak about the relationship between, I think you said the assessed value of the community, the stadium, all of this other development that's occurred and how that has had an effect upon taxpayers as well?
Yeah, so I'm sorry for the person trying to do the presentation, but if we can go back a few slides till we get to the tax rate, go back more, another one, keep going, another one, this one. So slide six is the one. So that chart so first of all, the one that the board member a moment ago asked about is kind of how does it impact the overall taxpayer? That chart to the bottom left there shows, on a per $100,000 basis, that's what the taxpayers are repaying from both your existing GEO bond measures. So that lays it out there. And it's paid off between now and 2039. And then to the far right there, what we're showing there is in that middle column, the percentage increase in your assessed value. So I was telling you how dramatic it has been in the last few years. So 22.7 last year, 9.2 the year before that. And then to the far right there, we show what it actually is on the tax bill. So it's gone from as high as if you go back to 2014, that your taxpayers are you're paying 156.14 per 100,000. Due to those large increases in your assessed value, it's gone down to now as low as $98.32. So your taxpayers have seen a decline in taxes for those existing members, not the ones with the new AV, the kind of the commercial development, but the existing development has saw a decline in their tax rate.
Okay, so thank you so much for explaining that, because that's going to be very important information as we have our talking points, as we go out into the community and try and sell this to our stakeholders. That's going to be a very important talking point for us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And can you also explain why that relationship was sort of inverse, right? Obviously, with the change in assessed value rising, the tax rate declining. Can you maybe speak a bit to that so that we're pretty clear about why that occurred?
Yes. Okay. So if you think about a tax rate is you basically take the principal and interest plus a small reserve. That's your numerator. Your denominator is your assessed value. So to the extent your assessed value grows, and it grows so dramatically, you're going to decrease that tax rate.
Right. I guess just to clarify, what are the contributing factors? I think you mentioned earlier development that has already occurred, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So the development that's occurred. So if you look at 2020 there, that development that was development as of December 31st, 2018. And so then between up in 2019, that new development became assessed value or taxable property. And now that is sharing some of the burden of the existing GO bonds.
Thank you. I think that's what I wanted to make sure people understood. Really appreciate that. I'm done. Ms. Evans, Ms. Grigsby, or Dr. McGee, do you have anything you'd like to add or ask?
You lost me when you said something about paying it back, because I thought you didn't have to pay bonds back. So I don't understand all of this. So that's it for my comments.
So the bonds are not, these GO bonds are not repaid by the general fund. They are repaid by the taxpayers of Inglewood Unified School District. So when a GO bond is sold, so bonds are sold to investors, then that it goes on to the tax bill until those bonds are repaid. So the property owners get mailed a tax bill that's due no later than December 10th and April 10th of that year, and those property tax payment, a portion of those property tax payments go to repay the GO bonds that have been issued.
Thank you, Ms. Grigsby.
Well, I have a question, but it's excuse me, difficult to frame it. Because initially I was understanding that as the city goes and the tax base, then our property taxes are correlated to that. But what you just explained was a little different. So is it that the valuation of properties, as we went through that devaluation of properties in Inglewood in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, when the cost of our tax rates went up for the bonds. But now that we are in a different environment in terms of the value, then the tax rate goes down. I'm having a hard time correlating those two.
Yeah, if you can see the slide that I'm on.
I'm looking at it, yes.
Yeah, so the 2 years, while property values declined everywhere in California, your assessed value only declined 2 years. And that was a negative 0.49 in 10 and a negative 6.32 in 11. And then it actually started going up in 2012, and then it modestly continued, and then all of a sudden took off, right? You see there in 2018 just kind of took off. And so when bonds are sold, there is a projection of what the AV will increase by. So for example, we would typically recommend selling with a 4% growth factor. And if we sold a 4% growth factor and then 2020 rolls around and you get a 22.7% growth factor, we now have much more property tax base to repay our GEO bonds with than we did before. And that's why you see the tax rate going from 130.79 down to 98.32. So our denominator grew. We added SoFi Stadium or whatever it is around there that came on the tax bill. That's our denominator. Our numerator is still our principal and interest payment. Hasn't changed dramatically. And since our denominator is so much bigger, it drove down the tax rate.
And if there was a decision for a new bond, let's say that $120 or $130 you mentioned earlier, that would be added to the $98.32 current.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. It's important to understand. These are additive to each other.
Okay, thank you.
So do we have an opportunity for this drop again with the incoming, like you said, the SoFi Stadium coming in that dropped it to 98.32, and then we're getting ready to, go for another bond, and then we might have an opportunity to have more economy come into the city, so then we can drop it again too. So then taxpayers won't be obligated to pay this high bond amount for very long, hopefully for less than a few years when the new stadium comes in.
It's all about when that development comes onto the tax rolls. And so certainly to the extent that that area continues to develop, then yes, it should give you more assessed value, which will be able to either drive this down or have more facilities from issuing your bonds sooner.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Great.
And then one last thing is what you're saying too is because of the new economy coming in, there are pretty much, to break it down to layman's terms, because there's so many more people paying into the pot. That is the reason why it drove down the cost of the tax rate.
I think that was a much better way of saying it than me trying to do the numerator and all.
Okay.
Get
Thank you.
more people in the pot. I like that.
Okay.
Well, I have to talk about the times. They're going ahead with the building of SoFi Stadium, but they won't have the people coming there that they planned for a few years now. So we have to think about that too. They won't be making as much money as they thought they were going to be making. So we have to consider that as well.
That's a good point. And then that, that all these comments about that are all lending themselves towards remaining conservative when we sell bonds and doing it in phases. So the districts that get themselves in trouble say, get me as much as quickly as you can. And then what happens is you have something like what happened to us this year, and you have those taxes that must go on a tax bill, and now all of a sudden your taxpayers are paying much more than you told them. So you're no longer thinking about how to get it down like this whole conversation has been about. You're now thinking, how do I go out in the community and explain why it's so much higher than I projected? So I think it's prudent to, despite all the growth that you're seeing in this community, use our conservative assumptions so that you don't get the district in that situation.
Adam?
Yes.
I have a question from our board member, Dr. McGee, and the question is, how does the coronavirus impact a bond moving forward?
So if you would have asked me that a month and a half ago, I would say it makes interest rates much higher and we shouldn't be selling bonds. If you then the bond market, and just like you've seen the stock market go up, the bond market rates have gone down and we're back to our historic lows. So it was very bad to be issuing bonds when this was all getting discovered. But now that the Fed has lowered rates, investors say we like safe things like GEO bonds of the Inglewood Unified School District. The rates have come back down. So as far as issuing bonds, it's a very good time. As far as one of the things I've mentioned in pros and cons, and this is yet to be determined, but it's a possibility, we may be entering a better bidding environment for construction with some of the maybe a possible slowdown in construction. So those are the two things from the kind of the financial side that I think about. But as far as that, those are the things that I would mention there.
Thank you.
Great. Well, Jason and I both thank you for your time. We will stick around. If there's questions that come up during the next presentation on our material, we're happy to help there.
Thank you again, Adam and Jason, for joining us this evening. We appreciate your support and the information that you've shared with us. We're going to move to item 10D, it's community outreach. And I am really happy to introduce Ms. Laura Crofty from Clifford Moss. And she's going to be providing us with a presentation on community outreach. Welcome.
All right. Good evening, Dr. Torres, locally elected board, staff, and community. Can everybody see the slide deck that I'm sharing? I believe so. I see a head nod. Great. So before I jump in, I just want to say how inspiring it was to be listening in at the beginning of the board meeting and celebrating the teacher achievements and celebrating the student achievements during this unprecedented time, graduating during a pandemic. Very inspiring, and part of what we'll get into today is sharing positive stories of achievement in the district. So I'm Laura Crotty. I'm Vice President with Clifford Moss. We're a public communications strategy and election consulting firm. I've been doing community engagement work for about 12 years. I have a background in community organizing and classroom support from my time in City Year AmeriCorps program. And we all know that the world is changing. We're all changing with it. And that's why I also specialize in research and innovation in addition to direct client work. And at Clifford Moss, we're a small boutique firm, which allows us to really give dedicated client support. We are very data driven, and it's glad to hear that you are as a board as well. And we really pride ourselves in our investment that we make in our clients, the approach that we take together to collaborate and facilitate, train, and coach, as well as the way that we tell our clients stories and learn as much as we can about you to help tell your stories in an honest and transparent and credible way. So what we know about what's happening right now, just before I jump into getting into the timeline and the phase approach, is that we've seen a sea change in behavior over the past 3 months. No one can deny it. You're adapting at Inglewood USC. We're adapting. The environment is requiring us to be strategic, flexible, nimble, and responsive in many different ways, shapes, and forms. And even though COVID-19 has in some ways sucked the air out of the room, we're seeing new communications platforms emerge, new adoptions, people onboarding to new communications, and we're seeing it change. We know at Inglewood USD, you've been nimble and responsive, quickly adapting to providing distance learning. You're taking advantage of a variety of different platforms to get important messages out to students and families, from your website to newsletters to emails to Facebook to Twitter to this virtual board meeting and so much more. And we also know that you are providing 3 free meals a day, no matter who you are, and that's been recognized. You've been recognized in the LA Times for that. So we're really seeing a shift in communications. Some of the tried and true ways still work, but we're seeing new ways, skyrocketing demand, higher open rates in emails, more response rates in text messages, and more people listening to and participating in robocalls. We're also seeing virtual ways to have two-way conversations with community, may it be a virtual town hall or a survey monkey, to show that we are listening even when we can't listen in person. A ton of questions having to be addressed every day from parents and families and students and community and media. And we're also seeing in a large school district in LA County, we've noticed a change in the tone in their online and social media. So where they used to have frequent flyers that were a little bit more negative, now they're seeing a lot more positivity on Facebook, a lot more engagement, a lot more thankfulness, and a lot more appreciation. So if we're preserving options and we're thinking about whether or not we're going to be on the ballot in November, we're going to have to adapt to all of this. And so this is our approach. This is our planning model. And the first step really is to assess and listen and determine feasibility. That's with a public opinion poll, as well as some potential top opinion leader listening. And then once feasibility is established, we move into the green education and prep bar, which is more education, more listening with the larger community and your Inglewood USD family, plus ballot measure prep, then action to go on to the ballot. And then you can see that the yellow is the what we call the election window, and then election day. And what's really important is actually this gray bar, which is post-election, because once you've won, as you did with Measure K and Measure GG, you have to then continue to communicate with your stakeholders in your community and your property owners about the work that you're doing to deliver on your promises. And we know, as Adam showed, you had overwhelming support for Measure GG and K, Measure GG at 86.1% voter support, and you've been delivering on your Measure GG promises. You've been very busy completing facilities projects, including modernization, adding new classrooms, master planning, asphalt replacement, wireless improvements, removal of portables, and so much more. And so part of your story is that continued delivering on promises in an open and honest way with your community. And we know that there's significant work that remains. Just like owning a home, you have to make ongoing investments. So we find that this work is data-driven, but also an art. It's an art and a science. And on the top left, you can see what we call the election success model. So we start with your story of needs. The fact that you've done this great research with your facilities conditions assessment is huge because people want to know. What are your needs? How can you prove that you have needs? What is your story of need? Well, you do have your story and you do have your proof of need. Then the plan, the solution right now, you're considering a potential bond. Understanding who votes and who will make that final decision on a potential future ballot. And then finally, resources, time, money, and people. And throughout this planning model, throughout this approach, we are guided by three core principles, and I can tell from some of the comments earlier that you are as well. A is your Inglewood USD community is unique. We cannot compare you to others. We really need to understand your unique story. Two, listening is a lost art. As you mentioned, listening to your community and how they feel about different items, including tax rates, matters. And number three, people support what they help create. So a combined consensus-built plan and solution matters in this planning model approach. And so the optimal measure is really the intersection between what you know your needs are, that $422 million of need mark that you have, and what your community is willing to support. As Adam with Film and Roll-Up mentioned, there's different tax rates that may be more easily digestible from your community, and there's ways for us to test that, as well as projects that they're going to care about in your classrooms and classroom updates. So the public engagement process crescendos into community consensus building around finding the sweet spot between those two perspectives. And so on that timeline, we see 3 different tracks. So A would be the district due diligence, the financing, the legal, the facilities planning. It's very clear from tonight that you're continuing to do that, and voters want to see that, your community wants to see that. Track 2 is board engagement and education. Board engagement matters. So does Dr. Torres's engagement in this, and understanding the needs, and for you all to be able to hear what is your community saying so that you can make informed recommendations and informed decisions. And then finally, stakeholder and opinion leader engagement, which is last but certainly not least. As you know, you have a large community out there with lots of opinions, and we want to practice people support what they help create. And so who are these stakeholders? Well, here's just an example of the 80-20 principle. On the right, you can see the Inglewood USD family, if you will, the school board, leadership, staff, parents, teachers, students, Dr. Torres as well. And we really see that technically being more 20% of your community. And then when you expand that to the larger 80% of the community, or all of Inglewood USD, you see other categories, voters, of course, civic clubs, seniors, businesses. They all have a stake in wanting to see your schools succeed. And we also know that quality schools equal a quality of life, a great quality of life for community members, whether or not they have kids in school. And so another way to look at your stakeholders is what we preliminarily put together, which is a map of your stakeholder community. And this is just an example for further refinement with you and staff, as well as stakeholder input. But you can see that there's not one category of stakeholder that could benefit from a potential bond, as well as benefit from needing to be involved in that conversation before important decisions are made. And you can see on the top left that voters is its own bubble or its own circle. And so as elected officials, you know, you're familiar with this, but I think it bears us taking a step back and looking at your voter profile for Inglewood USD. Total voters, about 70,000 in about 36,000 households. And we're seeing a shift in vote by mail. I'm sure you've noticed that Gavin Newsom did sign an order saying that everybody should be receiving a vote by mail ballot in November. So we may see this vote by mail number change, but we're still seeing, you know, almost 50% of your voters are traditional poll voters, or now with the new LA County virtual voting or the voting center change, not polls, but voting centers. And when you look at November 2020, or who is likely to turn out in November 2020, it gets smaller. So it's about 45,000 voters and about 27,000 households, or about 64% of your electorate. And so to break that down a little bit further in terms of party, you're familiar with this, so I won't dive deep, but I do want to share that you can clearly see that no party preference in purple is almost a quarter. It's a quarter of all voters and almost a quarter of your likely voters. That no party preference number was a lot smaller in 2012, and we're seeing it continue to grow. And so paying attention to that no party preference voter matters in any kind of structure that we put together. And then in terms of age, as some of you board members mentioned, not every voter has a student in school right now, but they very much care about the quality of education and the quality of schools. About 39% of your voters are 55 years and older. And then when you look at the likely November 2020 profile, about 44% of your voters are 55 years and older. And then when we look at it in demographics or demographically, you can see that this matters in terms of languages. We see 30% Hispanic for all, 28% Hispanic for likely November 2020. And you can see over 10% of voters are likely Spanish speaking, which is actually very high. And so multilingual communications clearly matters in any kind of public communications process that we put together, as you all very well know. And so going back to the phased approach and the timeline for getting to the ballot and being on the ballot, we see this in two phases. Phase one is feasibility. That's doing a public opinion poll to test messages, to test ballot statements, to test tax rates, like Adam mentioned, and to also be honest with your voters, as you mentioned before, about Measure K and Measure GG to see how they feel. Do they remember? What are their reactions? What are their concerns, so that you can be informed moving forward? And so we see feasibility as happening very soon in very short order. We also see that another school district in LA County that we're working with has been able to add COVID-19 messaging into their public opinion poll, because how voters feel about how the district has responded to that, or potentially need for more internet or wireless or community distance learning support, all of that really matters, and not being tone deaf in communications during what we're calling the COVID-19 era. And if feasibility is found, then we move into phase two, which is expanded public education and final prep. And so as Adam shared in his timeline, leading up to the August 7 deadline, the bond package would have to be reviewed, as well as the ballot package. And then you can see also ballots are mailed October 5th. 2020, which means that a lot of voters who vote by mail, about 50% of your electorate, and likely to be more because of new laws that we've seen come into place, will start voting a month before the election. But we just want to break down phases one and phases two. So phase one is really feasibility. We see this as a multi-track approach. You know, the 3 tracks of district due diligence, board and Dr. Torres engagement, as well as stakeholder engagement in ways that make sense, all surrounding a scientific public opinion poll that will give us scientific data on how your voters feel about a potential bond. And that's all part of the district due diligence. So at the end of the feasibility phase, which will happen in short order, we'll be coming out of that saying, okay, A, feasibility is present, continue to get election ready. B, some signs of feasibility are present. We want to preserve our options, so let's continue, but we know that we need to make a decision before August 7th if we're going to preserve options for the November 3rd election. Or finally, C, if significant risks emerge and feasibility is not present, then we would talk about maybe going to the ballot in 2020 isn't the best option. We need a little bit more time to engage with your community for electoral success in the future. But assuming that we are a green light go and feasibility is very much present, we would move into phase two. And so we have tools that we use in this process that have worked before. This is a proven method. Now, again, with COVID-19, we're having to deal with community engagement in a virtual level, but we're also seeing higher levels of community engagement. So we see this really as opinion leader conversations still need to happen, stakeholder conversations with parents and teachers and families still need to happen, and students, of course, virtual community meetings or virtual town halls, as well as taking advantage of online and social media. We still see that people very much are interested in mail when we do surveys, but we also see that people like online surveys and people are on Facebook and Twitter. And so it's about having a multi-pronged approach to reach our community in the many different ways that they communicate, to build consensus and listen to them and hear what they have to say and bring all that back to the board and Dr. Torres to say, here's what we heard, so that an informed decision can be made to move forward. And so when we're putting the public engagement plan together, we need to make sure that we have message discipline. As you mentioned, talking points matter. What are the top talking points? Well, as a result of the public opinion poll, we'll be able to see what are the top messages that your community cares about. What are some of the hot button issues that your community cares about? Or how do they feel about tax rates? How do they feel about Measure K and Measure GG? And as we build those talking points, we want to share those talking points everywhere we go about what we're doing. The first and foremost being that we're listening. So whether it be direct mail or media or brand visibility or stakeholder engagement or online, everywhere we're going, we're showing and saying, here's our needs, we're listening, what do you think? Because no decision has been made yet, and we want to have an active, deliberate community conversation about this, and all being singing off the same song card, if you will. And throughout that process, we want to be very diligent and deliberate in tracking. So we're not just going to say, oh, we met with maybe a dozen opinion leaders. We want to say we met with X number of opinion leaders. We listened to X number of stakeholders. Here's all the evidence of what they said. We tracked their responses. We listened. We charted what they said. And we have all this evidence to show that we listened. And here's what they said. And here's how we're building that intersection of interest between what our needs are and what our community has told us that they will support. And so just to summarize, just as Adam and Fieldman Roll-Up shared a timeline, we have a similar timeline here as well. I'd like to work backwards from November 3rd, 2020 at the bottom of your slide. So if you're on the ballot on November 3rd, 2020, the election window would be August, September, October, November, which backing up from that would mean that you're filing by August 7th, 2020, calling for an election. That decision would need to happen in late July or early August, the board recommendation for an election, followed by Dr. Torres's decision or action. And then before then, we would be looking at a board workshop or a bond package review, as again, Adam shared in his timeline. And then up above that, you would see that in July and August, if feasibility is present, that's when we would be pulling out all the stops to listen to the community and have that community conversation in phase 2 with stakeholders and public information and ballot measure prep. And then above that, you can see that phase 1, starting now, really starting in June, as that's coming up on Monday, is to evaluate feasibility, do some early listening, do some due diligence, and of course, public opinion polling. And then finally, your role changes over time. We're so excited to be working with you. So excited to hear some of the questions and comments already. Our role is to be your public engagement consultant, your strategic advisor. You get to be in the driver's seat, but we want to be there with you every step of the way to facilitate, train, and coach you through this process. So thank you so much. And I'm here if you have any questions or comments or concerns.
Thank you so much, Laura, for joining us this evening and for providing such a wonderful presentation. I'm going to open it up to our board members to see if you have any questions or comments. We'll start with Dr. Scorza. Dr. Falk?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Laura, for that wonderful presentation. Very engaging. And I totally agree with a lot of the points that you made. So thank you for that. I did have a question for you. If we decide, I know that we would be going into the feasibility stage to determine if there is a positive market for us to move forward with going onto the ballot. If we did decide to move forward, how would your firm put together the whole package as far as the marketing materials and everything, or would IUSD have input and kind of work with you and make sure that we're going through it every step of the way, or is it traditionally that you just put the package together for marketing? Like how do you do that?
Good question. So we would absolutely want to get your approval on marketing or public engagement materials that are going out there. We would put them together. So for example, if we built a direct mailer that went to your community, or even two direct mailers that went alongside some online banners about we're listening and we want to hear from you, we would design that package, or we would design that mailer and that message, and then we would ask for your approval and your input. We want it to look like it's authentic and coming from you, and we don't want to put anything out there without getting approval first.
Okay. So would you generally work with like a sub team from the district or the entity that you work with? Is that how it usually works, or would you just put the package together and present it at a board meeting?
We would prefer to have put a core team together that has an ad hoc sub-team approach that has a few board members and then a few people from staff, so that we have a streamlined and collective approach to getting that approval. And knowing that board meetings don't always happen every week, we would want the ability to work with a core team or an ad hoc committee to get approval so that we can get the messaging out there in a timely manner.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much. That was all of my questions. Ms. Grigsby?
Yes, I have a question. You spoke of your scientific analysis of the community.
Mm-hmm.
And you showed the average age of the IUSD voter on slide 11. Yes. My question, in your analysis of voters, are there specific age groups which tend to be more or less supportive of school bonds?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So I would say, first of all, that every community is unique. And we do see that in Inglewood USD, that both your prior bond measures have been supported overwhelmingly by your community at 80% plus support when they needed a 55% threshold to win. However, when we do look at the crosstabs or the breakout of ages statewide, what we typically see is that younger voters are more supportive. And that's one reason why if feasibility is present, sometimes there is an opportunity, or as Adam mentioned in the pros column, to take advantage of a November presidential election, because you're going to see higher turnout. And there's a lot of different factors, but one of the factors of higher turnout is you're going to have a higher turnout of younger voters. That doesn't mean that the older voters aren't supportive. And in fact, I would love to see poll results, because I would guess to say that they are very supportive. But to answer your question, statewide, we usually see a little bit more support for younger voters.
Okay. My second question and last question deals with the current climate in terms of being able to have effective community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure your company has begun to look at how you can pivot, because we have much less one-to-one or personal contact.
Right.
So I'm just curious about where is your company in that pivoting to meet today's need, because it's a different society, a different city that we're dealing with today than we dealt with 6 months ago.
That's a really good point, and I think you're completely right to say that COVID-19 has changed communications, and I don't think it's going to ever go back to the way it was. I think we see the change in two ways. One is that the school and your school district is seen as a trusted source of information. So you've been sending out newsletters and people are listening and wanting to get information from you. And you've been doing that. And so building that foundation of support and trust matters through multiple platforms. But the second, and this is kind of what you were alluding to, is we're seeing a change in consumption habits. So whereas we used to be able to have these in-person meetings, now there's an interest in constant information on multiple platforms that has surged. Interest in accurate information, accessibility, and speed, where we may have had a little bit more time to put communications together in the past. We're seeing that people are, especially from a trusted source like a school district, wanting to soak up the information that you can provide. And then we're also shifting to creative ways to still have face-to-face, in-person conversations and interactions. So whether it be virtual community meeting or whether it be a face-to-face Zoom with opinion leaders, we don't want to take away those important conversations that used to happen in the past. We want to just be flexible to having those in a virtual way.
Well, thank you. It's going to be an interesting challenge.
Yes.
Thank you for your question, Ms. Grigsby. Do any other board members have questions or comments?
Yes, this is Margaret Evans, board member. Thank you, Ms. Crotty, for your enthusiasm. But I hate to be the bearer of doom and gloom all the time, but this COVID-19 has changed me, and I'm in here by myself, so this is what I'm thinking about now. As far as, like Ms. Grigsby said, things have changed, and we can't go back to meeting and talking to people like we used to. And we have so many things that are against us now with COVID-19. People want to see our buildings. I think one of the other board members already stated this, that they want to see us, get our buildings together, but we still need to work on student achievement. And that's the message we need to be getting out there, is how we're going to improve student achievement. And with COVID-19 now, and teachers are not teaching all of these students, or parents are teaching the students, and we are in a situation, and I don't know how people have lost jobs, homeowners have lost jobs, and it doesn't look like some of these jobs are coming back. So in this time that we're in, and we're talking about adding more to their taxes, and we're just in a horrible situation right now. I'm one of those, I'm in Inglewood, but I have no children in Inglewood anymore. So when I look at those people who are around my age level that go to the polls or that mail in ballots, and now the president is talking about us not even mailing in our ballots, but that's another story. But we want, people in my age category that can afford to spend that $300 a month. We may not want to do that now.
Right.
So we have a dilemma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to solve this dilemma right now. I'd be happy to hear your suggestions.
So I think you're right. I think we always have to look at the grenade in the room. What is going to take this down? What is the current environment? And I think that's why we want to rely heavily on scientifically valid public opinion polling and not rush into phase 2 without doing that phase 1 poll first to get a read of the community. I think some of those questions, like what do you think that the economic recovery is going to look like? What is the current status? How are you feeling about the economic recovery? I think all those questions, we should seriously consider putting those into the poll to get a read from your community. And we may get the poll back, and it may reflect that people are feeling too strapped for cash. The cost of living is too high. There's been too much loss of employment, and it's affecting how people feel about paying for more taxes and supporting a potential bond. But I do want us to know that that might be one reaction, and I think the poll will let us know if that's true. But another one may be that people are feeling hopeful that there might be recovery. I think it matters how we poll, the questions that we ask in the poll, to get to those and make sure they're customized to what you're seeing in your pulse on the Inglewood USD community is right now, so that we can get a scientific read on how the community is feeling before we choose to move forward into phase 2.
Okay, I think that's it, Dr. Torres. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura, again for joining us this evening. We really appreciate the support. We look forward to
Thank you. Wait, I'm sorry. Can we hear you? I'm sorry about that. So thank you for this presentation, Laura. Really appreciate it. I know as we think about doing a tracking poll and considering sort of what the community is thinking at this time, there's a lot of goodwill that's been built with the district, and certainly we'll have an opportunity to evaluate whether or not this is the appropriate step to take moving forward. But I want to thank you for this information, because I think in general, having an effective engagement with the community and effective communications is a good thing for us to do. So even if we decide to go for a bond in November or not go for a bond in November, this is still going to be a good process for us to go through as we hone in on our communications and continue to think strategically about how we best meet the needs and communicate the successes we've had in the district. So thank you for sharing this information.
Thank you. And I agree with that. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you again. Have a good evening, Laura.
Thank you.
So board members, community, we're going to move to the last presentation for this evening, and it's under item 10E. And I'm really happy to introduce Ms. Elizabeth Hale, our Executive Director of Federal and State Education Programs, and she's going to provide us with a report on our district's allocation for state and federal funds. So welcome, Ms. Hale.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. Dr. Torres, board members, executive cabinet, and community. Usually at this time, I present an update on the use of our federal funds, but tonight I'm going to present on two topics. One is the federal funding flexibility, and the second one will be on an update on our LCAP process. The two areas have been affected by the COVID crisis, and so that's why I'm presenting. Thank you, Julio. On April 22nd, 2020, the United States Department of Education granted California the approval of the flexibility waiver request for our otherwise restricted funds. Next slide, please. The United States Department of Education has been working with different state departments to provide program and funding flexibility to support the LEAs agencies as they respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. But what I want to note on this slide is even though we received the flexibility, I underlined it, it does not change the allowable use of funds. So as you know, state and federal funds usually have restrictions tied to them. What I'm going to present are some flexibilities in regulation for the spending timeline. Next slide. The General Education Provision Act, also known as the GEPA, normally in our federal funding, we have a timeline of 27 months from the year of allocation. This waiver, the GEPA, contains flexibility and in the spending. Under this flexibility, the availability of the fiscal year of 2018 funds, which would have expired this September, have been extended for another year to September 30th, 2021. And that is really good news for us because it allows us to carry over our Title I funds and other federal funds without any kind of penalty. Next slide. So these are some of the federal funds that were under the GEPA Act, and I'm going to briefly go over each one in the following slides. Next one. Next slide. Title I, which everyone is most comfortable knowing. Again, the carryover flexibility. You normally cannot carry over 15% of our Title I funds from year to year. And in some cases, when you do, you have to apply for a waiver. Under this flexibility, the 2018 funds were given an extension to 2021, and our 2019 funds, which would have been allowed a 15% carryover, are now extended to September 30, 2020. The Title I funds, the purpose primarily are to support effective-based research strategies that close the achievement gap. So I heard one of the board members talk about it is important that we continue to focus on the achievement gap. The use of these funds will help us continue to do that with some extension. So one of the exciting things about this was during the closure, every teacher in the district was offered up to 40 hours extra duty to do professional development. And in doing so, many of the teachers participated in a Google certification process, and we had 273 teachers sign up for that presentation. That was really exciting. Also in this Title I carryover is the closeout. So again, the closeout means that you need to finish those funds by September 30, 2020, but now we're going to be able to close it out in 2021. All of this is going to help us with managing the academic areas for student supplemental support, as Christine mentioned earlier in the budget, that could be affected otherwise by the 10% cut that we're going to be receiving in our general fund. Next slide. The other funding is our Part 2, and the purpose for that is around professional development. It's to improve the effectiveness of our teachers, principals, and other school leaders through evidence-based professional development. It also is encouraged to increase the number of effective teachers, principals, and other school leaders. So then we also have a recruitment process that we work with through HR to retain and recruit teachers. There also was an allowable change in the definition for professional learning. It now adds to provide professional learning to teachers on distance learning, some of who are receiving this learning for the very first time and providing it for the very first time. Next slide. Title III. This is our most restrictive fund, and it is really a supplemental support to the other categorical funds for our English learners. And also their funding was extended to September 30, 31. And it really is to supplement any language instruction programs that we have for our English learners. It's usable, and we can do this support for our dual language programs that we have. And it also is to continue working with whatever area we're looking for in the development of a master plan or in the development of other programs to support our English learners. Next slide, please. Title IV. This is another exciting one. The Title IV grant is one of our newest grants. And as you see, the purpose was originally to have development of a well-rounded child, safe and healthy students, to improve the conditions for student learning, and the effective use of technology. With this fund, the purpose for the uses were waived. So we are not having to stick to the 20% for the well-rounded, the 20% for the healthy, and the original 15% for technology. During this COVID crisis, this has been very, very relaxed so that we can use these funds to provide devices, equipment, software, digital instructional resources, and really help out our schools. And so some of these funds were used when we were looking for chargers for our Chromebooks. As we were delivering them, we found that we were short on chargers. We used this fund to provide the chargers, and we purchased over 200 chargers for our students to have accessibility to the Chromebooks at home. We are fortunate enough that this one was given the most flexibility because it did help at the most appropriate time that we needed to provide technology for our students. Next slide. And then we have our Comprehensive School Improvement Fund. We have 3 schools that have currently been identified as Comprehensive School Improvement Schools: Kelso, Warren Lane, and Crozier. And so the first round, we had 2 schools in 2018. This is based on the dashboard for 2018 and the dashboard for 2019. The dashboard 2018, based on their indicators, found that 2 schools were identified. We had Inglewood Unified and Crozier, Inglewood High School and Crozier. And we were so happy to hear that Inglewood exited CSI in its first year. This plan is intended over a 3-year time, and you can get out in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So we're very proud of Inglewood for doing what they needed to do to exit the CSI identification. But then with the 2019 dashboard, we had 3 identified groups. We had Kelso, Warren Lane, and Crozier again. And these funds are to be spent over time, but as part of the federal flexibility, we now can spend more time in developing their plans and also helping them use the funds in evidence-based interventions. Next slide. So my second topic was on the LCAP process. The LCAP is our local plan, as you all know, that describes the goals, the actions, services, and expenditures to support positive student outcomes. Our LCAP is directly linked to the dashboard, and the state indicators are directly linked from our LCAP to our dashboard. It also addresses our priorities, and it is our opportunity to share how we plan to increase student achievement and address the gaps as well. Next slide. So the LCAP would have been coming to you this June for approval, but because of the COVID-19 closures, it was very hard to continue the process for the LCAP. And so there was an executive order, N5620, that was established by the governor in April 22nd, 2020. And it allowed for the LCAP to be extended over time. So now, instead of presenting it to you in June, a 1-year template will be presented to you December 15th. But there were some stipulations attached, and one of those is the written report. Next slide, please. So the overview of the N5620 is that it delays the current 3-year LCAP, which we were working on and continue to work on, from 2021 through 23-24. We no longer have to submit our budget that was attached to the LCAP as part of the budget approval in June with Ms. Decanay when she sends the budget, because there won't be that LCAP. We will be adopting the LCAP in 2021 budget. Okay, so we still need to continue the actions and services that we have in our LCAP. It's just the creation of the new 3-year plan. That is what's going to be extended. Next slide. So here's a new timeline in response to the executive order. We have a written report to the community, and as Ms. Decanay mentioned in her presentation, the presentation of the annual budget that needs to be board approved. And that has to be to the county by July 1, 2020. That is a new document and the typical annual budget. Then the 1-year LCAP that will replace and be the buffer between the 3-year LCAP, that will be due December 15, 2020. And you will have to approve it then, but then it has to be approved and will be approved by the county January 14, 2021. So what we don't want to have is a 1-year LCAP that will be a rush job. So we want to continue the action services that we were working on in this development, archive that information, wait to see what the new LCAP template will look like, and incorporate that information in our LCAP for the 1 year, but also continue to build our 3 year. So July 1, 2021, we'll have the development of the 3 year LCAP, which would have been this past June. And then our local indicators for our dashboard will be submitted for November 1st. And that had changed to be originally for this year submitted June 30th. Next slide. So the written report, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about it. This is the executive order that explains what we've done in Inglewood in response to the COVID-19 closures. Next slide. So to the extent practicable, we should seek stakeholder feedback. We have continued our LCAP meetings on a weekly basis. We are working with Cabinet on a weekly basis. We're working with Ed Services and our principals on a weekly basis to get feedback to develop this written report. It needs to be adopted by the governing board and Dr. Torres. And this is this written report won't require a public hearing. It was just a report. Upon of the report, then it has to be posted on our website for the public to see. What is very important in the development of this report is we want to explain exactly what we've been doing for this time of closure. It is then submitted to the county superintendent for submission, but not necessarily approval as they do the LCAP. Next slide. This is a template of the written report that we are working on. This report is to the community. The audience is the community. The goal and the purpose of the report is to provide the community with a clear understanding of services provided during the period of school closures. What needs to be included is the proactive response to the issues and the concerns from the community in relations to the closing of the district. The description should be sufficient and with enough detail to have any person in the community understand what our steps were in addressing these 5 prompts. Next slide. So moving forward on our next steps, we met with the Educational Services Department and the principals to introduce this written report template. We've met with our LCAP community to share the template. I continue to take part in the group alike meetings from LACO on any updates on the written report. And so we have now designated the different departments that are going to help complete the template. Once we have some information, then we'll take it back to the LCAP stakeholder committee to get some feedback from them. Also, looking at that is also going to be how our LCAP surveys will continue to address the gaps that we may have during the closure and will continue to have because of the closure. Next. So our next steps continued is we've really had some successful virtual stakeholder engagement meetings. I'm very pleased that we've had an average of 22 to 28 participants on our stakeholder committee. The principals have been very engaged in looking at the requirements and the changes that have happened since the closure. We are sharing this information on a weekly basis with the district leadership team. And our hope is to propose a community forum where we can share the written report. But most importantly, we want to reassure you that our work with the LCAP has not stopped. It is our goal to continue working with identifying the data and the needs for what's best for our students to complete the year 1 and the year 3 template. Next. Any questions? No questions.
Thank you, Mateo. I just wanted to acknowledge you for your amazing leadership. You've done an excellent job of continuing to engage all of our stakeholders, including staff, as we develop our plan to provide an update on the support that we provided throughout the closures. And I just wanted to let you know that we appreciate you so much.
You're welcome.
Awesome presentation, and I'm going to ask our board members if you have any questions or comments. We'll start with Dr. Swarza.
Lourdes, this is Mrs. Evans. I just want to thank you for such a thorough report and to wish you all the best in retirement.
Thank you.
Same here. Really want to appreciate your hard work with this. And obviously, with the changes that we're dealing with as a result of COVID-19, your leadership has helped us maintain consistency in responding to our community. So thank you for this as well.
Thank you, Dr. Scorza.
Ms. Hale, this is Dr. Falk. I just wanted to thank you so much for that thorough report. Very enlightening. I'm happy to get the news about the new Title IV funds that'll go towards technology for our students. I was very excited about that part of your presentation. And I'm looking forward to that. And then also I was just gonna ask what are you doing right now in this COVID-19 situation as far as community engagement? Is that whole process on hold until the executive orders, safer at home orders are lifted, or are you still just working virtually?
We're working virtually, but we're actually doing group work, and then they give me feedback, and we're recording the meetings. So if any time you want to see what we're doing, you're welcome to it. But what has been most exciting is even though we're meeting virtually, we still have a lot of active engagement from the group. And what is very exciting about this group includes classified, certificated, community members, parents, and district personnel. So what I like is it's become a very unified voice for the best for our students. And I always get positive feedback from the community members and the stakeholder committee about how they feel that their voices are being heard and that we recognize their stakeholder engagement. So even though it's virtual, I'm very happy to continue doing this with them because they really are committed to making sure that this process is successful.
Okay, great. That sounds wonderful. And again, congratulations on your retirement. You will be missed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Falk. Any other board members with questions or comments? Thank you again, Ms. Hale.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Have a good evening. Okay, board members, community, we're going to move to our consent calendar action items. We're going to move to agenda item number 12. So we're going to move to 12A, human resources. Does our board have any questions or comments regarding items 12A1 through 12A8?
No questions for me.
Hi, I have a question about the behavior intervention assistant. What is that position? I just saw it.
Okay, great. Thank you for your question. Ms. Kajabi?
Yes.
Would you respond tonight? Perhaps Dr. Lucas can weigh in as well.
No, I could respond. Ms. Evans, thank you for your question. Special education a couple of months ago brought to our attention that there are about 130 contractors that are providing assistance for special ed students on behavioral matters. Therefore, rather than having consultants or contractors, we went ahead and developed this job description, and we actually started the recruitment because we have 130 vacancies. We have been receiving applications for it, and starting next week, we have our testing and interviews taking place for the whole month of June. There is training also available prior to our candidates taking the test. It's a 6-hour training, and it's all on the job posting.
This person is a special ed assistant?
Correct. Yes, these are CalPro positions. So they are a behavior intervention assistant that will be helping our special ed students.
This is one position?
Yeah, it's 130 vacancies we have.
Oh, 130 positions.
Yes,
Oh,
yes. So this will be a savings approximately between $3.5 to $4 million if we fill, not if, we are going to fill all 130 positions, vacancies.
I see. Instead of hiring from an outside company, we're hiring our own people.
Correct. And as you know, that's part of my responsibility and goal as far as hiring our own employees. And this is one of these classifications.
Oh, because it just said assistant. It didn't have an S on it, but now I see we're hiring 130 people. Okay.
Correct.
How much of a savings did you say that is?
It's between $3.5 to $4 million of savings.
And when will we see that in our budget?
I will defer that to Christine.
Hi, Dr. Falk. Thank you for asking that question. So essentially the way that we're paying contractors right now is in our 5850 through our special education contribution from the general fund. And so if, once we make the shift of hiring our own, instead of contracting out, the net savings with salaries and benefits could potentially be that amount. And this is something that, unfortunately, the contractors and vendors that are charging us a much higher rate. And so it would be more cost effective should we internalize these and hire these people internally.
Okay. So will we see this reflected in our, so I know that it's dependent on us hiring all of the persons in those positions, but we can see that cost savings reflected in our budget as early as this coming year, or would it be more likely reflected in the following year? Because that's a huge cost savings.
Right. I mean, absolutely. I think that, Ms. Kajavi has really put the recruitment efforts out there, and we would realize the savings, at least on the budget end, as soon as these individuals are fully onboarded.
Okay. Sounds good.
I have to also add that the salary is competitive. So I'm really hoping that we will be attracting candidates for all of these positions. So these are 130 new jobs in our district.
So you're saying that we had 130 contract people working that we didn't have to pay benefits for, but we had to pay the company $4 million.
Correct.
And we're going to be able to save now that we have to hire our own people and pay benefits for them?
The $3.5 to $4 million is savings. So the cost was actually more than that. So yes, it's going to be a savings when we fill all these positions.
Wow.
I have a question. Are these part-time? This is Alice Grigsby. Are these part-time or full-time positions?
These are when students are at school, so there are 6-hour positions.
Are we able to train some of the persons we are laying off for some of these positions?
Yes, our employees that have been laid off, they definitely can apply to this position.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Kajabi. And I just wanted to add, as we've mentioned in the past, our vision is to build capacity within our district. And as we all know, we contract for a lot of services that we could provide in-house. And so our goal is to continue to look at how we could improve efficiencies in our district. And instead of contracting out for these critical services, that we hire within our district. And so this is our attempt at doing that. And I'm really proud to say that as a result of us, hiring our own employees, that once these positions are filled, that we're going to be able to save our district critical funds that are needed. So I'm really proud of that work, and I just wanted to make sure that our board and community was aware that that's something that we're really focusing on, is ensuring that we, not contract out, that we build capacity within. So thank you again for that. Board members, do you have any other questions or comments regarding items 12B1 through 12B6?
No.
Okay, thank you. So items 12B1 through 12B6 are each approved. We're now moving on to 12C, Measure GDM Facilities. Does their board have any questions or comments regarding items 12C1 through 12C14?
Thank you. I'm waiting for this this to scroll here. Thank you. No, I have no questions.
Thank you, Dr. Scorza. Board members, any other comments, questions regarding 12C1 through 12C14? Seeing none, items 12C1 through 12C14 are each approved. We're now moving to 12E, Student Support Services and Operations. Does our board have any questions or comments regarding items 12E1 through 12E2?
There are none. Thank you.
Thank you. Items 12E1 through 12E2 are each approved. So now we're moving on to item 12F, County Administrator, and I'd like to ask Dr. Scorza to provide us with an overview of some of the items under County Administrator, such as the board governance calendar, board meeting calendar, etc. Dr. Scorza?
Absolutely, yeah. So thank you all so much. And as it relates to item 12F2, I just want to remind the board members that we actually began this discussion on our board governance calendar in fact, a couple of years ago, and we revised that governance calendar in February. We've had an opportunity now to discuss the changes to that board governance calendar, and working with district staff have identified the topics that we're going to place on the board's agenda for the coming fiscal year, and also included and upgraded items that are more inclusive of the work that we're doing. And so I'm really proud that we did all of this hard work together as a board, and we're able to actually move this calendar together. The district's team, the staff, Dr. Torres and her team have been really phenomenal in that they've gone through and identified the way in which they can present information, i.e. via report, written or otherwise, presentation, as well as all of you as board members who have now been appointed to certain roles will be able to present at that given time. So before we move on, are there any questions about the board governance calendar? Thank you. Hearing none. Dr. Torres. We'll move on to 12F3. As you all know as well, we have our 2021 scheduled board meetings and workshops. These board meetings have been staggered with, again, input from our district leadership team to ensure that we are actually holding board meetings at regular intervals based upon our need. And so we wanted to make sure we responded to FCMAT's recommendation and that we limited the number of special meetings. I also had a conversation, we had conversations at our board workshops as well about having more consistent board meetings. And so now our meetings and our workshops will all be held on Wednesdays at the stated time per our recent board policy update, which is 5 p.m. As well. And so we'll be adopting this board workshop calendar with specific topics that have already been identified for the upcoming year, based upon the conversations that you all have shared at our meetings, et cetera. And so I'm proud to have a calendar that makes a lot of sense. It's more predictable. We will not be meeting and holding workshops over the holiday months, i.e. November and December. We're gonna make sure we avoid schedule conflicts as well. And so in this presented board meetings schedule and we also, I just wanted to let you know, one of the things that we did differently this year was we baked in a board member orientation come January. As you all are aware, elections have changed. And so I'm really happy that we will have a review annually of the Brown Act of board policies and protocols, and that will take place in January, which will be a best practice for us as well. And so, are there any questions about the board meetings and workshops, board members?
Hi, Dr. Scorsa. This is Dr. Falk. I just have a quick question. I know that we are approving the meeting calendar. However, due to COVID-19, I'm sure that you're intending for these, they're planned out to be in person, but will be virtual as long as we need to be safer at home. Was there any concession for that?
Yes, Dr. Torres, thank you for asking. We will continue to follow. I'm so sorry, Dr. Falk. Jesus. My apologies. We will continue to follow. Yes, Dr. Falk. We will continue to follow public health safety guidelines. There have obviously recently been recommendations from the governor and other entities about sort of school reopenings and when to return to in-person interactions. I believe the district has taken all protocols, taken all precautions to ensure that those safety protocols are in place. And until further notice, these meetings will continue to be virtual unless otherwise noticed per state and public health guidelines.
Just a comment. We're talking about opening schools and sending our kids back to school and teachers, but we have to meet virtually.
Well, I think I think Ms. Evans, for the time being, we're still in a certain phase based upon the governor's order. And so when the governor and the county Department of Department of Public Health make additional recommendations, then we'll be able to transition our meetings based upon those recommendations. So I think what's important to note is that the district's meetings, including our board meetings, will track public health guidelines. We're not going to do anything that runs afoul of those public health guidelines. And yes, as schools reopen, we will obviously be following the phased recommendations from our public health officials.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions before we move on from this item? Okay, thank you so much. Hearing none, Dr. Torres.
Thank you so much, Dr. Scorza and board members. Items 12F1 through 12F6 are each approved. So we're going to move on to item 13, approval of minutes. Does the board have any questions or comments regarding the minutes of the two regular virtual board meetings that were held on April 22nd and May 6th, 2020?
I have none.
Okay. Thank you. The minutes of the two regular virtual board meetings that were held on April 22nd and May 6th, 2020 are each approved. So we're moving on to item 14, board member remarks. Dr. Scorza.
I just want to really lift up our graduating seniors and acknowledge the hard work that they've done. Acknowledge the support that our families and our teachers have provided for them so that they can wrap up this year. Want to really support their growth and development, and just thank our teachers, thank our district staff for stepping in and doing such a phenomenal job. You know, as an essential organization, our schools have stepped up to the plate to serve our community amidst this crisis. Again, we are the heartbeat of our community, and I cannot be more grateful for the work that has been done by all of you and the people that are here. I also am going to ask that we adjourn our meeting in honor of Larry Aubrey, who recently passed. Longtime icon, mentor to so many of us who were young and in the field. I've known Larry for a number of years and had the pleasure of working with him. He is also a former board member for Inglewood Unified School District. And so Larry has been and was, again, an icon in the community. And his leadership, could not be understated. What he did to help lift up issues that were affecting our community, what was critical. He served as a columnist for the Sentinel, served as an activist in the community, and will be greatly and dearly missed. And I think what's important to note is that we continue to lose people within this, in amidst this crisis. It's really difficult for people to mourn. It's difficult for us to be there for each other. And my heart goes out to the many families we have that have dealt with these challenges amidst this pandemic, be it a loss from the virus or otherwise. I know a lot of us are facing those challenges. So let us continue to keep our families in our thoughts and send out our best wishes and prayers so that ultimately we can all heal and take care of each other during these difficult times. Dr. Falk?
Okay. I just want to kind of piggyback on what Dr. Scorza said, and I just want to acknowledge Dr. Torres, Isabel, Norberto. I see you sitting there in the boardroom, and I want you to know that your hard work is appreciated, and you're doing this for our students. We're not there, but we are with you in spirit, and that, I also wanted to let you know that we really appreciate all the hard work you're doing, and it's not going unnoticed by me or anybody else. We really appreciate you. Thank you for lifting up our staff. This is a very difficult time. With COVID-19, a lot of people are depressed about what's happening. And I'm so happy that, you're thinking out of the box. You are acknowledging them for their time, their commitment, their service to IUSD and to our family. And so I just want to say thank you, and you're appreciated.
Thank you, Dr. Falk. That means a lot to us.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
This is Mrs. Evans. I want you to know that, again, Dr. Torres, we do appreciate you and Cabinet for all the work that you're doing. Every time I talk to one of you, I think you're saying you're in the office, or maybe you're at home, but that's not too often that you're at home. And just the fact that you're coming out and still working so hard and putting all of this together, I wanted to thank you for that. Also, I finally got out of the house a couple of weeks ago and went over to Hudnall Elementary School. Delta Sigma Theta was passing out masks and hand sanitizers to parents, to anybody who was there. We did that for a couple of Fridays. And I wanted to thank those people also who are there working so hard, ABBA and the staff at Hudnall Elementary, parents who were there, just everybody working, handing out food for the students, and to SJLI, the Social Justice Learning Institute, who provided vegetables and fruits for parents on one Friday. It was just amazing to see how hard people are still working in spite of what's going on in the community. People were there. And one of the Fridays, I went 2 Fridays, and one of the Fridays we were there, we helped with the census, help parents fill out the census forms. We don't know why they hadn't done it already, but so many people have already filled out census forms. And we were happy to be able to help with that. I just wanted to let you know that although I had stayed in the house for those first 2 months, I finally got out and was able to still help our community. So thank you very, very much, Dr. Scorza, for your team, and Dr. Torres for your leadership, and everybody who's working so hard at Hudnall and all the rest of the schools in the district for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Ms. Grigsby?
Thank you. Unlike Mrs. Evans, I'm still sheltering in place, so I am not out in the community, but I'm trying to be as supportive as I can. On this schedule we just adopted, the report on the Measure GG committee was due in April, and that committee did meet this last month. And the presentation was extremely interesting and useful. And in light of today's presentations about the bond possibility and the community engagement possibilities. If that decision is to kind of move forward, I think it would be very good for all of the board members to hear the presentation that was made on the variety of projects that have been completed or what percentage has been completed of all the projects under GG. I think these will be very useful as we go forward in talking about what is happening in the district as it relates to facilities. I want to thank Dr. Torres and the cabinet for all of your community outreach. I read, I view, and I'm a supporter from afar for the many kinds of outreach processes that are happening. My last statement is that, just for the record, we did approve the changes in our personnel for job classifications, but I do hope that the JROTC program at Inglewood High School can be revitalized in the very near future, or something similar for students who may have a great interest in that. As we end this discussion, we go forth and we compliment our 2020 graduates and the many employees for their many years of service to Inglewood Unified School District. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Grigsby. Really appreciate that. And I'll close by just saying that I really appreciate the leadership of this board. Ms. Evans being out there with the Deltas and delivering goods to our communities. Dr. Falk working with our parents and making sure that they're engaged and continue to engage in our communications and marketing. Ms. Grigsby, providing your feedback not only on GG, but also on a number of items that have continued to face the district, and ensuring that we're focused on instruction and learning. I'm so grateful for all of you. I also want to close by inviting you all to Wonder Lunch, which is this Friday at Crozier. It should be known that Inglewood Unified School District is on the map right now nationally. I have people hitting me up from around the country. Wonder Lunch is a food giveaway that will take place with Janelle Monáe, Jadena, Angela Rye, and Congresswoman Maxine Waters, who reached out to the district to partner in order to deliver up to 15,000 meals to our community. There are hundreds of families that have registered to attend. The district will be providing census services as well as enrollment management services. So tell your families to come on out. We want to make sure our students get enrolled in our schools and in our districts. They will continue to practice safe physical distancing. And there will be a number of opportunities for folk to engage. So I want to make sure that not only our board is informed, but our community is informed about the exciting event that's coming up this Friday. It will be an event that's not to be missed. I will say today, Janelle Monáe posted, and she had over 20,000 likes on Instagram. Jadena's posted, there's been hundreds of shares. The word has gotten out around the community, and folk have been really impressed with how well Inglewood Unified has been able to support the community. Also like to invite you to a town hall that both Dr. Falk and I will be co-moderating along with Dr. Torres, that focuses on the future of education in a post-COVID-19 world. What will our schools look like, and how can we ensure that we do not go back to the old normal, but instead that we focus on and center equity? That will be taking place next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Please be sure to join. It's being shared both on social media, but will also be posted widely. And so ensure that you come on out, come join this conversation. Joining us at that town hall will be Dr. Pedro Noguera, who is currently at UCLA Center for the Transformation of Schools and will become the incoming dean at USC. But I still say go Bruins. So Dr. Pedro Noguera, as well as Mark Philpart with PolicyLink, Dr. Omai Garner, who is over is the director of labs at UCLA, or one of the director of labs at UCLA, doing COVID-19 testing, to talk to us about how we maintain safety and health in our communities and beyond. So with that being said, thank you all for listening and joining in with us tonight. Dr. Torres?
Thank you so much, board members. I really appreciate your comments. And I just wanted to acknowledge each of you for your ongoing support and leadership. I have the honor of working with such an amazing board, so I just wanted to thank all of you. I also wanted to acknowledge our staff for the hard work and commitment. And today we had the opportunity to open our meeting with acknowledging our staff members because of the service years. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Julio Morales, who's here in the board meeting with me, and also Isabel Montenegro, who's sitting next to me, and congratulations to the two of you. You are amazing and for your years of service and commitment to our amazing district. I wanted to thank you, Ms. Grigsby, for your recommendation with regards to the facilities updates. I agree that the presentation that Ms. Duck and I provided to the Bond Oversight Committee was excellent, and it was very thorough. And I will make sure that we review this information with our board and community in June. So thank you so much for your feedback. We're going to move on to item 16 of our agenda. Our next regular board meeting is scheduled for Monday, June 29th. And during this meeting, we're going to hold a public hearing regarding the district's 2021 proposed LCAP and our budget. And then on Tuesday, June 30th, we're going to have a second meeting to adopt the report. So just to clarify, this meeting on the 29th will be around budget. As Ms. Hale mentioned, we're going to review the LCAP update in a future meeting. And so we're going to move on to item 17, adjournment. And I do want to take this opportunity to adjourn in honor of Larry Obrey. Thank you, Dr. Scorza, for that recommendation. But also I want to adjourn in honor of those brave men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives while serving our amazing country. And although our schools were not in session this past Monday, many of our teachers did teach lessons and guided students in understanding the importance of honoring the memory of all of the men and women who died in military service in the United States. So Memorial Day, as we know, it allows us with an opportunity to reflect and to remember the hundreds of thousands of brave men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice and lost their lives. And so we know that many of them actually were from the Inglewood Unified School District, and we know of many of our students who have left behind families and friends, and we know that we continue to grieve them. So today we honor them, and I would like to adjourn this meeting on their behalf as well, and we're going to include the memory of Larry Obrey. So on that note, we'll adjourn at 8:39 p.m. in their honor.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.